All right, we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Certainly. Councilmember Soria. Absent. Councilmember Carbasi.
Here.
There's Councilmember Soria, present. Councilmember Carbasi, present. Councilmember Arias. Present. Councilmember Chavez.
Here.
Councilmember Bredefeld.
Here.
Vice President Maxwell.
Present.
And Council President Esparza.
Present.
All right.
Councilmember Soria here.
All right. So next we'll have the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. If everyone would please stand and continue standing. Under invocation, I'd like to welcome Reza Nikumanesh from the Islamic Cultural Center of Fresno. Appreciate it.
All right, greetings of peace be upon all of you. I would like to again thank the council for inviting me here for this invocation. As our community is beautified by so many different expressions of faith and perspectives, all of whom may call out to you in different fashions, I call out to you from my own faith tradition in the name of God, the most beneficent, the most merciful. We call out for guidance, we call out for patience, we call out for hope, and we call out for change. We pray that those who have been chosen to lead our community are open to love and compassion and progress, and inspired to work for the greater good of all of us rather than a few. We are reminded of, and I pray that we are guided by, the saying attributed to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who said, budgets are moral documents. On what, who, and how we spend our dollars are in fact manifestations of our beliefs and our ideologies as a society. God bless you, council member. As we are in a session of budgeting, a monumental task for this council and the mayor's office to have to wrestle through, I direct my prayers to guide you all to think outside of what we have been and imagine a new reality, a reality in which all of us can belong. I pray that our budget reflects that we as a city are careful to ensure that we spend to uplift the most marginalized, most sidelined, and most vulnerable. I pray that our budget is a proof that we believe in the brotherhood of humanity, in justice, in equity, and that we will, as a city, create opportunities for everyone, particularly those who may not have had many doors open for them. I pray that we are innovative in how we allocate funds to beautify our city, to create more open, safe space for our families to grow and breathe, to reduce gun violence, and to work to make our city safe for all of us. I pray that we're wise enough to invest in those resources that have the greatest impact. I pray that we throw away our outdated notions of what works and what we thought should be, even when data proves otherwise. I pray for help for us all, and that you, oh God, empower our city to adopt a budget, a moral document that proves to all of us that all of us belong here. Oh Lord, I pray that this is so. Amen.
Councilmember Soria, please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank all of you.
All right, so move on to the approval of the agenda. Clerk, are there any changes to the agenda?
I did receive some changes. First off, I would like to mention that we have Spanish, Hmong, and Punjabi translators via Zoom. Our meeting is closed captioned through the city's website, and we have our in-house Spanish translator, Amelia, and she would like to announce her services to the people in the chamber.
Hola, muy buenos días a todos. Esta junta se llevará a cabo en el lenguaje de inglés, pero tenemos interpretación simultánea en el lenguaje de español disponible en persona. Si gusta escuchar la junta en español, por favor encuéntreme atrás del cuarto para poder entregarle un dispositivo. De igual manera, si gusta participar en la porción de comentario público, hágalo con libertad, ya que también habrá interpretación disponible. Gracias.
Thank you. And as for changes to the agenda, consent calendar item 1A, that is file ID 221078, regarding approval of the minutes, The June 23rd regular meeting minutes have been moved from the agenda and are continued to July 21st, the following meeting. And also consent calendar item 1K, that is file ID 221088, regarding compensation of elected officials, has been moved to the contested consent calendar for further discussion by Council Vice President Maxwell. Those are all the changes I have received.
All right, council, do we have any further changes to the agenda? I'll go ahead and go in order. Councilmember Soria, Councilmember Carbasi, Arias.
Council President, I'd like to pull item 1G as in Gary for a separate discussion and table the public hearing 10 a.m. number 1 to the July 21st council meeting and request that staff include the updated information received from the stakeholders and staff reports to be updated.
Okay. Councilmember Chavez, Councilmember Butterfield, Council Vice President, and
Council President, point of clarification, we're required to set time, so the time would be the same, July 21st, 2022 at 10 a.m.
sounds good. That was for the 10 a.m. item number 1.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Seeing no further changes to the agenda, we had a motion to approve the agenda. We have a motion. We have a second by Carbasi. Any opposition to approving the agenda? Seeing none, motion passes 7-0. We'll move on to our ceremonial presentations. We have one this morning. It's a proclamation honoring our guest, Patsy Montgomery. And that proclamation is sponsored by Councilmember Soria.
Do we have all the documents now? All these? That covers it all?
This is the summary
Okay. Of all the,
of everything that's in the document.
great, thanks.
Good morning, everyone. Just thrilled to be here this morning to honor and celebrate Patsy Montgomery, someone that has been a longtime Tower District resident. She actually lives in District 3, Councilmember Arias' district, but been an advocate in our community, a fearless advocate, I will say, for the last 4 decades, not just here in our Central Valley, but up and down the state when it comes to reproductive justice in our community. So today we want to take the time to honor and celebrate her because she is retiring, though maybe part-time retirement, I don't know, with all the work that there is to be done. Unfortunately, you might still be out in the trenches, I'm assuming, on a volunteer basis. No, but we do want to thank you here on behalf of the city for all the work that you've been doing for folks here in Fresno in expanding the access to health care and expanding reproductive justice and making it also having spaces for our LGBTQ plus community created in our community that are safe spaces where they feel too that they belong and that they're part of Fresno and our fabric of our community. So I want to just thank you for the work that you've done with Planned Parenthood Marmonte. I know that you're going to be missed. You've been a force to reckon with, not just here in the valley, but up and down the state. Folks know you and know the work that you've done and just the footprint that you've left in our community. And we will continue to, look to you for guidance as we continue in that fight that you've been in for so long. So I just want to thank you for all the work. We want to take time to have the proclamation read, but before that, I would love to just give you a few minutes to, say a few words.
Thank you. I want to thank the council member for this really great honor. I have not only been working in the field of reproductive justice for over 30 years, but prior to that, I was a children's advocate for the Rape Crisis Center for almost 10 years, doing programs that served almost 45,000 kids a year. Annually in this county, it was a diverse program that really helps secure safety and build healthy families. And for that, I greatly appreciate all of those lessons I've learned. There is so much work to do, and I'm honored that we are here in these chambers. In 1971, when Planned Parenthood was founded in Fresno, Walter Cronkite said on the evening news that evening that today in the Central Valley of California, some visionary leaders opened a Planned Parenting, he called it, clinic. And it remains to be seen who will follow in their footsteps. I'm proud to have been one of those people 20 years, that began 20 years after that. And I look forward to the leadership of Socorro Santillan, Karina Gallardo Montoya, and all of the staff who go day in, day out, serving people with kindness, with an open heart, and with quality health care. So thank you so much.
Again, thank you so much for your work, for leaving also great people behind you that can step in and continue the fight, because we know we're in the fight of our lives at this current moment. So with that, I do want to have our clerk read the proclamation for the record.
Whereas Patsy Montgomery was born dirt poor but family rich in Tahlequah, Oklahoma. Her father was a farmer, her mother a housewife, and with her older sister, they lived in a 2-room home with dirt floors, a wood-burning stove, a hand pump for water, and an outhouse. Their home burned down, which prompted a move to California, where close relatives helped her father access work that eventually led to a union job. She and her siblings were raised middle class and were afforded educational opportunities due to the pay and benefits of the Iron Workers Union. And whereas Patsy began her advocacy in the 8th grade, where she organized and led successful boycott of the cafeteria at her K through 8th grade school. Patsy later attended Fresno State University, majoring in therapeutic recreation, where she met her late husband, Michael. As she transitioned to engage in volunteer work, it led her to develop a child abuse prevention program for rape counseling services in Fresno in the 1980s. That project, funded by the Office of Child Abuse Prevention, eventually served 45,000 children annually in Fresno County. In the late 1980s, she was honored by the California Legislature and the County of Fresno for her work on behalf of abused and neglected children. And whereas her career with Planned Parenthood began in 1991 as a part-time health educator. In 1995, she became the Regional Director of Education. In collaboration with her fellow team members in Fresno, Merced, and Bakersfield, they continued school-based education while expanding their programming to include non-traditional opportunities for engagement. And whereas the school-based education programs championed by Patsy included Drop-In Center, Destination Out of Harm's Way for LGBTQ+ youths aged 12 to 24, Promotores de Salud programs that engaged rural Spanish-speaking people, Promotora program for sex workers in Fresno City and County, as well as other programs for incarcerated and marginalized youth. And whereas Patsy has lived in Fresno area for over 50 years, where she has been officially advocating on behalf of reproductive justice issues for 39 years. As Patsy Montgomery begins a new chapter of her life, she is grateful for the strong people who have generously shared with her their life experiences and expertise, her 3 children and 2 beautiful grandchildren. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the City Council of Fresno hereby proclaims June 30th, 2022 to be Patsy Montgomery Day in the City of Fresno.
We appreciate you, Patsy. Thank you. Congratulations. All right, moving on to council member reports and comments. We'll go in order. We'll give Councilmember Soria a minute to come back on up. Councilmember Carbasi. Oh, Councilmember Arias.
Just want to thank all my colleagues for all the fun these last few days on salary raises. It's much appreciated distraction from the multi-billion-dollar budget.
Councilmember Chavez. Councilmember Bedefield? Council Vice President? No? Beat you all to submission throughout the whole month here. Everyone's ready to knock this thing out. I guess that Councilmember Kabasi, I passed over you. No? All right. Well, today's June 30th, last day of June, so I could say one more time, Happy Pride. And do want to thank, before we get, and we'll get there, but do want to thank the budget staff and the administration for working late into the, not late into the night, early into the morning, apparently. So appreciate all you folks. We see you. Get some coffee, and we'll get this thing over with here today at some point. Thank you. Any report from the mayor or the manager? All right. Okay. Consent calendar then. So consent calendar. Well, first I want to see if there's any additional items to pull, and then we'll move into public comment. Any additional items to pull from consent? I think we just have one right now, which is item 1K. Oh, no, we have two. We have 1G and 1K. Okay, all right. So before we pass the consent calendar, we'll go ahead and take public comment. So now would be the opportunity to speak with respect to the consent agenda or unscheduled communication, as well as the closed session agenda. If you have comments on the budget, there will be separate public comments prior to the council passing the final budget. So like in the final budget, public comment will be a separate portion of the meeting. Right now is public comment with respect to the consent agenda, unscheduled communication, or closed session. So I do have a few yellow cards here already in the chamber. If you're in the chamber and would like to speak, please feel free to fill one out, bring it up to the clerk. If you're on Zoom and would like to speak, feel free to raise your hand. So first here in the chamber, we have Mary Padilla. Welcome, Mary. You have 3 minutes.
Good morning, everyone. I would like to address the council on a very important, crucial matter for all of us, everybody in Fresno. We need to trust in God as well as obey Jesus and His commandments, because if all humanity has forsaken God, and look at now, we are paying for it. Look at all the murders. We don't have any more morals or values. We don't thank God for anything, giving us a car, breath, we take it for granted. And I say, when you play with God, you are going to pay with God. Look at all the shootings and murders and rapes and everything, because I look ugly, because we have not put,
You still have a minute left. Your time is not up.
I know, okay. If you guys want to learn the truth, go to First Galilee Missionary Baptist Church and to show you the love of God, but also the anger of God. We don't want to be here. If we treated another one like ourselves, the nation, the city, the world would be truly different. I thank you for listening.
Okay. Our next speaker in the chamber is going to be Fernando Paul Elizondo.
Peace be with you. Well, today, I see that you all gave yourselves a raise, or is it a gouging? What happened to that integrity I tried to show you? How can you give yourself a raise when you lost $800,000 of our money? You built a kennel instead of housing for the homeless. Your report card's not A, it's F, okay? And you guys give yourself not a raise, it's gouging. I know Esmeralda didn't do it. She has integrity. Neither did Mr. Gary Benefield. But the rest of you, shame on you. We have our police officers that go out there every day and try to help us and defend us. Where's their raise? They're the ones that should get the raise for putting their life on the line. Some of you are borderline. You can go either way. And some of you are just plain corrupted. And the Bible tells us, for the love of money is the root to all evil. And that's where we're at today. Love of money. It's not trying to help anybody. People are hurting out there, and you're giving yourself 70% raise. You know how much that is? 70 cents on a dollar? In case you guys didn't know that. So you want to live arrogantly? That's up to you. But you're going to pay the price to God, not to me, not to the neighbor, but to God is watching what you're doing. You're supposed to be here for helping us, not help yourselves. See? We also have another thing that we're losing. I received in the VA that Mexican is not a race anymore. We're supposed to be called Caucasians. So we're losing the battle all the way around for our own being here. So anyway, some of you have no conscience, I can tell by your face expressions. Some of you don't care, as long as you got that checkbook. But the wrath of God is upon you for doing such things. Remember that. The wrath of God is upon you. And that money will just turn into salt. Nothing for you. Anyway, I rest my case.
Next in the chamber is going to be Gabriel Lozano. Okay, but okay, yeah, I'll save the card for the budget. Thank you, Gabriel. So again, we're going to be doing the budget public comments separate. But if you do have other 5 other cards for unscheduled communication or the consent agenda or closed session, please bring them on up. Next on Zoom is going to be Lisa Flores.
Good morning, all. And I would say happy 4th, but I'm not celebrating this year because now I'm a second-class citizen. I want to read off a couple of names to you. Chuck, he was a World War II veteran along with John. Edmund was a Marine. Ambrosio was a retired Air Force. Larry fought in the Korean War. Bert and Felipe were Navy. Felipe was my dad. Sarah, my cousin, came back with PTSD and and damage from her time in Afghanistan. And my Uncle Reuben, my beloved Uncle Reuben, he's retired Navy, a Republican, a gun owner. And you know what all these veterans believed in? And I've actually had talks throughout their lives about my rights as a citizen, my rights to object, my rights to address, my rights to fight. Gary, you may call me ignoramus all you want, but I know I'm a smart woman of color who has the credentials and the paper on the wall to go toe-to-toe with you. This 4th of July, I'm not celebrating because this past week, half of America became second-class citizens. We became cattle to be breeders and to have no choice. I'm just so upset at the nature of the fascist evangelical right and their plans. But thank God Almighty that I live in California. And I would encourage everybody to vote this fall for the state constitutional amendment for women's autonomy over their bodies. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to come back here to the chamber. I have a few more yellow cards. Next in the chamber is going to be Zachary Taylor.
Talk here?
Yes, sir. Please
Yeah,
speak
okay.
into the microphone.
I just came to speak about the fund you guys received, or the money you guys received to try to help the homeless people, like last year or the year before or something. Just housing us homeless is only half the problem. Income to pay the rent is the other. Without jobs or some kind of income after the year rent is paid, then the person's going to end up losing their house. My bad, sorry. Or if they don't, after the rent year paid, if the person isn't receiving SSI or already have found some work, they'll lose their place. I think that money should be used for hiring people to spend time with individuals alone and in group settings, depending on the task, to get to know the person and what their likes and dislikes, what they're good at, skills they have, and experiences and shortcomings, so they can better understand the person and what they're requiring personally in order to find them a job that they'll be able to not only do but also keep and enjoy as well as be good at, because anyone can go and find a job, but in order to find a job that fits a person's personality, their mental capabilities, physical capabilities, and emotional stuff, you need to connect with the person. The job specialist would need to reach out to companies and local businesses around town to get support and secure positions that could be filled if a suitable candidate is found. I don't mean just filling positions at companies. Say the person is a decent artist and enjoys it. Well, businesses, excuse me, enjoys it. Well, businesses always like new and catchy ways to advertise, so the person could design for anyway, the person could like design signs and flyers and stuff for the business, and just, I don't know. That's it. I'm done. Yeah.
Next speaker in the chamber is going to be Deborah.
Good morning. I'm homeless. I just want to read a letter I wrote. Homelessness, due to the fact of someone falling on hard times, does not therefore make one a lesser of a human being because of it. But unfortunately, in the eyes of America, they become looked upon as some sort of different species of humanity. Sad is the money wasted. I say wasted because it's not used properly on a special task force, special for the homeless. This special force seems to have left out the humanity, which is the heart of the people. What kind of group would be okay with the locking of water and trying to ban the giving of food to those in need? Things happen when we all work together to accomplish the same goal. We all need to be on the same page at the same time. Of the money given to the problems that exist is not more of the same, another task force where they do as they please, not seeming to be helping any matters on solving homeless problems. We don't need more policing, but we do need more wellness facilities where we can go to shower, laundry, use of computers, self-help groups, personal hygiene is much more important than police officers throwing away all you own. So now you're left not only homeless, but homeless without any possessions, all due to the fact the officer lied about storing belongings and just took it upon themselves to throw everything he possessed in a garbage truck. Do you know that makes a person feel like? I mean, really, you feel like shit, like you don't exist anymore. Your worthiness is zero, nada, nothing. You feel like you no longer belong to anything. Self-worth, a big fat zero. Where does one now get the money to replace all of these items? What fun would this be? Doesn't exist, and neither do you now. Go away and die somewhere is what you feel is being said without actually saying it. You'd be surprised at the outcome of being able to shower on a regular basis. How would you like to go a week or two without showering or clean clothing? It's horrible. What we do best we can do with what we've got to survive this monstrosity of homelessness and not having the simple things in life. We don't grow up saying, when I get older, I want to be a homeless person, barely surviving. Come on, think about it. What did you say? I'm sure it wasn't, I'd like to be homeless when I grow up. With this destroying of our property, how does it get replaced? I know for a fact, if it were the other way around, you surely wouldn't like this being done to you. Hell no, you'd be pissed off. And this is how we'd like to teach our future generations about humanity, the caring and sharing of others. Caring, sharing, and giving one makes one smile. To be thought of someone actually taking the time to care about you, wonderful feeling. Now I'm disabled, almost senior citizen without any belongings or hygiene products because some officer got a hair up his whatever and took it upon himself to disrupt my life and make things harder than they already were. Hardship upon hardship is what is being done to us. Instead of helping us, the fact the officer are making homeless life harder than it really has to be. Where's our housing? What's going on? We're being told by one there's housing available, and the others are saying no, yes, no, yes, no. What is the truth? What is the truth on the facts for us or not? Stop the lying of facts. If we want our children to become an adult without homeless problems, we need to teach our future generations about humanity, compassion, empathy, and caring about others.
Thank you, Deborah.
Oh,
We're a little bit over
working
time
one
now.
goal.
We're going to move on to the next speaker. Thank you for coming out this morning. The next speaker is going to be Natalie Torres.
Sorry, I didn't write anything down, but I just wanted to say that I would want to see change.
Speaking to the microphone.
Yeah.
Pull the, yeah.
Okay. That I would like to see change with this situation because I became homeless quickly. I went from the top to the bottom fast. So for me, it's really hard to still get through it. Every time I get almost out of it, boom, right back down because of I mean, last week they came, the task force came and took my stuff, but they tore the roof off of my little thing, hit me in the back with the thing, and instead of like saying sorry, they detained me until they were done throwing all my stuff into the garbage. So stuff like that that's not helping me at all get out of the situation. Every time I call to get into one of the programs that they kicked me out of, by the way, they just push me. I mean, they're like, oh, we'll call back. It's full right now. Or there's always an excuse. Or I don't see anything, any help. I don't see any help. I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous, but that's it.
Next speaker in the chamber is going to be John Kohler.
Last Monday, your Heart Task Force threw away all my wife's possessions. They threw away my cell phone, my laptop, and I asked them to put that in storage, and they go, no, it's not up to us. It's up to Fresno, whatever they are, and they threw away. I had 2 carts that I actually bought, and instead of putting them in storage, the guy goes, "No, we don't store this stuff. We just throw it in garbage." Back in February, I was assaulted by one of your Hearts officers, and it's an ongoing investigation. To give them money is redundant because they don't have compassion. I was told Monday that either pack up or get arrested and lose my dogs. And I mean, it's like, okay, so what? You guys already arrested me one time, and I had to pay $180 to get my dog out of the dog pound. This is money I can't afford. I'm homeless. My wife is homeless. And every time they hit us, they always throw away our clothes, our food. So what are we supposed to do? What's good? What good is getting CalFresh if we can't eat because Hart comes along and throws away our food? That's all I have to say.
Next speaker is going to be Brandy N.
I want to back up what they had to say. Since I last saw you, I've been out every single day getting waters out to people, and it's, I mean, it does concern, is sometimes concerned about being, other people are concerned about being emotional, but it really is when you see people suffering. And what makes it more challenging is that their lives are being made unnecessarily more difficult. In the last week, the people here, I mean, all of them have been displaced by the Heart team. One of them was 2 days ago when it was over 104, and they were being made to move, and it is not accomplishing anything. And we're putting, I know that we're doing budget, but $10 million is going to the Heart team, and they're being displaced. I know several of the people here and other people that I've seen in different camps that have been displaced like 2, 3, 4 times, and they're just getting moved because there is no place. And I have been treated poorly encountering the Heart team, because when I was helping this wonderful lady over there with her, I came upon that, and I asked them, like, are you offering shelter to them? And they said, they asked her, is a POV, did the POV team come out? And they said yes, and it's like, see? And then I contacted and found out that there was absolutely no shelter that day. So they were offering, maybe snacks or something like that, but they weren't offering them shelter. And, they're losing their belongings, they're being displaced, it's affecting their health, it's affecting their dogs, it's affecting everything. And we need a more effective way so that people aren't suffering. Zachary had mentioned to me and talked a lot, and I would love to be able to have him share more with you guys if you want to meet, about a jobs program, about being able to, everyone I talk to, almost everyone I talk to, unless they're not able to work, says, like, what we need is jobs. We need housing, we need jobs. And I would love to see that $10 million go towards a program that would get people jobs, that would get people into tiny houses, would guarantee that they would be able to find a place to go, so that we don't have to lose anyone. I don't know how many people were lost because of this heat, because it was, but I know several people at one of their camps that had heat stroke that they talked about, that had to deal with those things. And so please consider creative projects like that, and not just job programs where it's a temporary job, but actually getting them into permanent jobs, whether or not it is getting training, with connecting with people who can, jobs that can do apprenticeships and train them, getting them, going to the shelters and giving them, and other places, and giving them information to prepare them, whatever it takes to overcome these challenges, so that people have a permanent place to go. And please, we need to stop the sweeps. It is basically just moving people one place to another and making it look like something is accomplished, but it's not accomplishing. So please listen to the words that were said today and act on it.
Okay, I have no more yellow cards. No one is on Zoom, so I'm going to go ahead and close public comments. Can I get a motion to approve the balance of the consent agenda? That was a motion by Councilmember Carbasi. A second. Is there any opposition to approving the balance of the consent agenda? Seeing none, item passes 6-0. We'll move on to the contested consent calendar. I believe we have 2 items. We'll go in order, alphabetical order. So we have 1G, that was pulled by Councilmember Arias.
Council President, I'd like to, I've discussed this matter with the city manager, and they huddled with staff today. I just noticed that in the adjustments for contract police services, we are making all the adjustments for the human capital accordingly to the additional raises that we give our officers. However, the vehicle fee remains flat. And as you know, gas prices have soared, and so have the cost of new vehicles. So after discussions with city manager, I'm going to make a motion to approve this item with the exception of the police vehicle rate, and that will come back with an updated formula once they make the appropriate assessments and adjustments.
I'll second that. So you're saying that presumably that portion will come back at a higher rate?
Correct. That's once they're done with their assessment.
Okay. I have one member punched up. Councilmember Soria?
No, it was on the consent, but I'm okay. Thank
Okay.
you.
Any further discussion on item 1G? All right. Is there any opposition to approving item 1G? What, actually, yeah, any opposition? Seeing none, item passes 7-0. Move on to item 1K. I believe this was pulled from contested consent by Council Vice President Maxwell.
Yeah, thank you, Council President. I wanted to address this item. It was something that we brought forward for introduction last week. There has not been a final vote on proposed salary increase for the City Council or the Mayor. But I do want to say in that week's time since we introduced it to now, there has been a lot of feedback from the community, and just want to say I really appreciate it. That's one of the reasons that we oftentimes will introduce an item before we take a vote, because we really do take into consideration and value that public feedback that we get. And I know that I've had folks reach out to me from my district, and the messaging was, hey, we understand that, you know, council is probably due for a raise, but we do not agree or respect the proposal that you have put before the council for a vote. And that resonated with me, and one of the ways that we initially came up with that number was we didn't want to arbitrarily pick a dollar amount. We thought that perhaps by fixing it to the Board of Supervisors, it was a set line in the sand. But I appreciate the feedback that has come in over the last week, and was happy to work with my co-sponsors as well as the mayor in coming forward with another proposal that we think is much more modest, commensurate with the work that we do, commensurate with our place as California's 5th largest city, with the time that we put in, and based off the feedback that we've heard over the past 7 to 10 days. Again, I want to thank everybody who provided feedback. I know this was an important issue to a lot of folks. I want to let you know that the council has heard you, and we've made some adjustments that I think are much more in tune with what we've heard over the past week. And with that being said, I'll hand it over to my colleague and co-sponsor, Councilmember Chavez, to elaborate a little bit for further introduction at this time. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Vice President Maxwell, and thank you, President. I want to also thank our residents that called in. As my colleague mentioned, we introduced this initiative last week for introduction. Subsequently, we have received comments from not just residents, but former folks that served in these positions, former council members dating back to the 80s, appreciated their input and feedback, and I agree. I think oftentimes, you know, as council members and policymakers, one of the most important jobs we can have is to listen. So we did listen, and what we did is we wanted to have a more thoughtful, analytical approach to what this looks like. So we mirrored a lot of what we do for our own staff members here in the city of Fresno, and I don't think it's any secret that we do have some of the best paid police officers, best paid firefighters, best paid employees here in the region, in the state, and so we wanted to take that same approach. So what we did is, and hopefully this will cut back on some of some of the words from my colleague and friend, Councilmember Bredefeld, and we won't probably hear the words outrageous or egregious or explosive all too often today, because it's the same approach that we've taken. I actually used some of his data in comparing what other cities across the state of California do, and everybody knows that, there's the top 5 cities in the state of California: Los Angeles, San Diego, San Jose, Oakland, Sacramento, and Fresno. And so we wanted to take that approach and use an analysis of what that would look like and have the pay structure reflect that. And so with that, we did come up with some figures that I'm going to make a motion to amend the original introduction for reintroduction per our city attorney. And city clerk, if you could please read that into the record.
Certainly. So this will be considered reintroduction as amended, and the ordinance will come back for adoption on July 21st. And here we go. Motion to amend the proposed ordinance setting the compensation of elective officers as follows. 1. Section 2 of the ordinance is amended to state that council members' compensation will be $92,000 starting January 1st, 2023, $101,200 starting on January 1st, 2024, and $111,320 starting on January 1st, 2025, and continuing until otherwise modified. 2. Section 3 of the ordinance is amended to state that council president's compensation shall be 12.5% greater than council member compensation. 3. Section 4 of the ordinance is amended to state that the mayor's compensation will be $149,500 starting January 1st, 2023, $164,450 starting on January 1st, 2024, and $180,895 starting on January 1st, 2025, and continuing until otherwise modified.
City Clerk, we did have a request that the mayor wanted to enter into the record. Mayor, believe you wanted that compensation for yourself capped at a figure that you had arrived. I'm going to give you the opportunity to enter that into the record.
Thank you, Councilmember. I know this does not impact the mayor's office in the current term. It would not take effect till January 25, but I'm asking that council cap the salary of the mayor at that first figure, the $149,900, and that be the only increase for the life of that term, and that any of the additional increases don't take effect until January of 2029, which would be a new term for a new mayor.
Thank you, Mayor, for that. And just for the benefit of the public, I just want to go over what figures we came up with. Obviously, the city of Los Angeles is their pay is at $207. San Jose is at $137. San Diego is at $131. Oakland at $104. Sacramento at $99. And Fresno, it would be at $92, putting us at 6th across the state, even though we are the 5th largest city in the state of California. So with that, I'd like to enter that as an amendment, and if I could get a second on that. All right, with that, I will allow my colleagues if they want to speak, or Councilmember Bredefeld, if you want to say anything.
So
comment?
Councilmember Soria and then Councilmember Carbasi. Oh, okay, Councilmember Carbasi.
Okay. No, thank you, Mr. President, and I appreciate the comments that were made. I've always said this is always an opportunity to learn. I think that when we rolled out this program, it wasn't as well thought out as it should have been, and I'm fortunate to have an electorate that is very well spoken, and they have access to me, and they've let me know how they feel. And they wanted something that was just more sensitive to the economy where we were, something that's a lot more reasonable. And we've done that. I've absolutely heard the community, and this is, we are representatives. Our job is to fulfill your will, and the will is for a much more measured and reasonable plan. I want to thank the mayor, very, very helpful in this process to come to this better path, along with my co-sponsors. Now, while my co-sponsor, Councilmember Maxwell, and myself will not receive this raise, the voters will decide if we get another term. I think we felt it was important to do something that met actual metrics. It was more measured and responsible. And I think that the original raise was just too large a raise, and people expressed they wanted something more appropriate, and that's what we've done. And I'm very grateful to the community for holding us accountable. Thank you.
Councilmember Arias, and followed by Councilmember Bredefeld.
I'm going to go before explosive, exclusive, and egregious. Come on now. I wasn't referring to you, Councilmember. I was referring to Sunday Morning Matters. But in all seriousness, I just want to point out a couple of things. One is, I remember being in this public conversation years ago around, pay raises, and there was a big, hoopla about our former superintendent, Larry Powell, not accepting the salary, and what a great, community benefit that was, and how much charity for the community since he wasn't going to accept his $200,000 salary. What he forgot to mention is that he was drawing down a $300,000 pension in exchange of a $200,000 salary, and that the county superintendent adjusts their own raise without any board approval, and that every county superintendent has increased their own salary to upwards of $300,000 without any governing body to say otherwise, without it being within the realm of neighboring superintendents, and without being, with the fact that as a county superintendent, they operate literally one school, and not hundreds of schools. So I want to be thoughtful of that. Also, I want to point out that we just approved new fees for those who contract our police officers, and the new fee for a police officer is $70 an hour. That's what Walmart and the Apples pay, which equates to $134,000 a year, is what it cost us to compensate a police officer. $134,000 a year before overtime. And they do a tough job. They have the toughest job in the Central Valley. That's why we made them the highest paid in the Central Valley. Our firefighters are also the most well-compensated firefighters in the Central Valley. Our executive staff, our city manager, is the highest compensated in the Central Valley of all city managers because it's the biggest city in the Central Valley. So I was supportive of going forward based on a very simple notion that when I see our work, we spend 2 weeks deliberating a budget. We hear 3 hours of public comment on every department budget. We scrutinize every department head for an hour on every single line item of the expenditure, where our counterparts in the supervisor chairs spend 4 hours in a multi-billion-dollar budget, have 0 community meetings throughout the year, don't serve on multiple external, committees that are required for this city and for this job, and by no means are scrutinized the way we are, and nor are their demands similar to ours. 90% of their money is passed through. They have no authority on how that money is spent. They just simply authorize it based on state and federal rules. 90% of our money is completely flexible and spent locally, and therefore we have to assess whether we spend more money on parks versus public works versus crime prevention and gun violence. And as you hear every day, the amount of homeless residents in our city who are asking us for help and housing. We are now up to 6 homeless shelters in the city. The county has 1. And our city residents are also county residents. But yet, the general public and our residents demand that we do more. And every time we open a shelter, it typically requires 4 or 5 layers of funding, multiple meetings and changes. And even when we open them, there's still adjustments to the quality of its operation, the quality of the food, how we can do it better. My colleagues and I have had a town hall meeting with the homeless residents. I visit the homeless motels once a week to ensure that policing and safety and human trafficking is being managed the best we can. So I want to be crystal clear that I do believe that these council members and this mayor work as much, if not far more, than our county supervisors. And in order for us to continue to have that level of service that the public expects, in order to respond to residents and not have to take a secondary job to provide for one's family and one's college kids' funds and everyday operations. We have to do this. Just this week alone, the county's proposing a $7 billion transportation tax for 30 years. $7 billion that would dictate whether we can provide public bus service or whether we have to cut half the city routes of busing in the city for the next 30 years. That required me to travel to San Joaquin, Mendota, Faribault, Kerman, in the middle of budget deliberations of a $2 billion budget. I can assure you that the supervisors aren't traveling the rural areas to meet with rural mayors and articulate why the proposal as it stands is not in the best interest of the city or our residents. So I'm glad that my colleagues have, taken the egregious, explosive, exclusive, whatever title of drama you can put on this, and have made some adjustments. But I do believe that these folks on this dais, our staff in the audience, earn every single penny that they are compensated, because it's not easy work. Just as an example, all the folks you see here were up at 3 in the morning getting a budget ready. Our folks were in the office at 7 a.m. after going home at 3 in the morning. Nobody's doing that across the street. And even then, we may not get the budget perfect. It might not have every single thing that people want, but it's a lot darn better than it would have been without us having council members that spend the time hearing from our constituents, having community meetings, and responding to the needs of our city. Those are my comments. Thank you, Councilmember President.
Councilmember Bredefeld.
First of all, I appreciate the work that has taken for the council to get to this place. It's obviously a better place than where the council was a week ago. The issue for me is not about work. I know everybody up here works extremely hard for their constituents. I see it. In my mind, there's never been a doubt about the effort and hard work that every council member puts in responding to their constituents' needs and working hard to improve their districts. That's a given. But salary raises and how they're done for elected officials is really important. I mean, we vote on budgets, we vote on salary raises. We generally are giving people 3%, 4%. It's been probably standard for decades. And so when we're doing a 69% raise, or even here where it's better in the sense that the first year is a 15% raise, then a 10% raise, and then a 10% raise, that's still a 35% raise over 3 years. And that's on top of, in 2018, we had a 23% raise in 2018. And so now it's really about a 58% over the next 6 years is really what it is. So it's better than 69% in 1 year. May you want me to explain it to you? You're looking confused. I mean, right now we're having a 35% raise over 3 years, and we just had a 23% raise in 2018. So those are dramatic pay increases. I'm not saying more money isn't justified, but it just seems very hefty. And that's what it seems like. It's a larger issue in government salaries. I mean, I was just looking at some of the government salaries in the county. I mean, they're exorbitant. And people have reactions when they hear about some of the salaries that government officials make. And so I think it's a larger issue. And I also differ in the way this was done, because you should be able to put forward what you believe a council member ought to make, and then before you get it, you should face the voters. The voters should have the last say. And in this case, we had council members who won, and then gave themselves a raise, and that order is backwards. And so that's another reason why I can't support this. It's always been that we put forward what the salary ought to be, what we believe it ought to be, and then you run for the seat, and if you win, that issue has been addressed, and voters will tell you yes or no in terms of what you've done. And in this case, that process got bypassed. A second thing is that this raised the issue when we tied it to supervisor salary, something that has caused me heartburn for years since I was on the council before. We have Fresno County supervisors who have their salaries tied since 1994 to judges. And that is a scam. Those folks over there never have to take a hard vote before the voters on raising their salaries. And it was designed that way in 1994. It's a trick. And so they make very fine salaries, $135,000 that go up every year, in addition to benefits, in addition to retirement, in addition to stipends, in addition to cars. And the board chair, who runs a meeting essentially, gets paid $151,000, $16,000 more to run the meeting. It's a scam, it's a sham, and I wish the media, I wish the Fresno Bee wrote about it, focused on it, instead of ignoring it, just as the columnist for the Bee addressed it, this salary increase. It needs to change. It should be fixed. It should be rectified. We're going on 3 decades of that nonsense over at the Board of Supervisors, and it should change. So I want to recognize the tremendous work that these council members do. I fully support what they do. I know they work hard. We all work hard, and we deal with a lot. But we also know that when we're running, that this is about service, this is about sacrifice, this isn't about enriching yourself. I think we've gotten away from what was obviously an outrageous potential raise, and I'm glad the council heard people and have done something much less than that, but it's still, in my opinion, pretty large and bypassed a process that should have been done with the voters before we did this raise. Having said that, I'm not going to support it, but I appreciate the fact that the council really heard the people and have done something much less and different. Thank you.
Councilmember Carbasi.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to thank Councilmember Rittefeld, Gary. I think your comments were shared by a lot of people that we heard from. But I am willing, if you'll support this, to get rid of term limits. No, I'm only teasing. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay. So I wanted to ask the mayor to come back on up. Mayor, I appreciated your comments and your preferences about the mayoral salary, but I think your preferences are a little presumptuous, presuming you're going to be here another term. You may or may not, right? It's a hard job. The last guy we had, got chewed up in 4 years and left, right? And I think if you had any hair left, it would have fallen out by now. So I don't know what your logic was behind capping the mayoral side. I mean, if you want to not receive it in this term, that's fine. But you may or may not be the mayor in January 25, and I'd like to keep, if we could, keep the amendment, the original amendments, where the mayoral salary increase as well for whoever the next mayor may be.
I appreciate that, Council President. I was not trying to be presumptuous at all about thinking, I'll be the next mayor, because that could change, over the next, obviously, 2.5 years. And it does not impact me in this term. I would not get any increase. But I don't want anyone to think, quite frankly, I'm very fortunate. I spent 40 years in the police department, and I have a pension that everyone knows that I draw. So it's not, for me, it's not the money. Other people are at different points in their life. People sitting on this council don't have a pension, don't contribute to a pension, don't have the opportunity to have a pension. And you're at that point in your life when you're, you have certainly responsibilities, but you also want to take care of yourself and your family. So I appreciate that. And so I would just offering that up as a way to maybe ease some of it, if there is any angst out there amongst folks. But that was my thought process. And I did want to say thank you to the council. I mean this because, I had asked in our conversations that really for three things. One was a more responsible, gradual approach to these pay raises, much more moderate, and then in line with other cities of like size in California. And you've done that. And you've done that. And so I appreciate that, and I do believe that the pay is commensurate with the responsibilities that a council member has in this city. This is a very complicated, complex city, and it does demand a lot of hours on the part of council members, especially those that represent certain districts where there is high demand for government. I see that. I see it every day. I know the amount of work all of you have put in on this budget in the last few days as well, making sure that we have this. So, and there hasn't been a pay increase for this council for the last 5 years. January 23 will be the first time in 5 years. And so increasing it by 3% a year over that time is not, in my estimation, out of line. And then making the adjustments over the next 2 years to be more in line with other cities of like size, I see that as appropriate too. So for me, it's an individual choice because I do have a pension, and you know, whether I win or not, you know, maybe the motion could be if somebody else wins the race, they can have the increase. So anyway, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem, Mayor. Yeah, so I mean, I'd ask my colleagues to consider that. And I appreciate the mayor and you know, his willingness to sort of bypass that. But you know, I'm thinking about the position and the structure altogether. I'm not thinking about Jerry Dyer. I'm thinking about, you know, the mayoral position altogether. Is there any willingness to lift that cap?
Well, Mr. President, why don't we do this? Can legal counsel, if you don't mind, would it be possible, let's say if the mayor was, if we leave it at the cap the president wants, but the mayor can always, or any council member can always forego a portion of their income and give it back to the taxpayers? Is that always, is that a possible thing?
We can research it, but I think it could be arranged.
Okay.
Yeah, so Jerry, if you got an increased salary in January 2025, you could always give it to the foundation or whatever you might.
You can donate to District 3.
No, and thank you, Mayor, for doing that. That's a very important gesture, and it means a lot.
I'd like to see Councilmember Bredefeld do it since he has to.
Second that motion.
Say that on the microphone.
Councilmember Bredefeld, since it's about public service, would you want to donate your salary?
He said no.
That's a no.
But no, you know, I appreciate the work that my colleagues have done. You know, at first glance, the original resolution or the original ordinance last week, it did make sense to me to match the compensation of a legislative body here in town that works really only a fraction of the work that we do here at City Hall. But, you know, my colleague is right that we have to listen to the community. I was a bit surprised at some of the community response. You know, I would ask the community to not just take a look at us, but really just take a look around because, you know, it was not an arbitrary ordinance that my colleagues brought forth. It was commensurate to, again, our local legislative body. And I would like to see that same sort of level of outrage, right, directed at across the street or, you know, wherever it might be. So again, upon further examination and taking a look at the amendments here today, I'll continue to be supportive of this new proposal that is more comparative with other cities rather than other local legislative bodies. I think that's also a fair comparison. So I'll continue to support the resolution today. I don't see anyone else punched up.
And Council President, just to verify with the motion maker and second, that did include the mayor's amendment, requested amendment, right?
So, no, they're going to withdraw that amendment so that the cap is not there that the mayor requested.
Yeah, the mayor will voluntarily do that if he chooses to do that.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah, so we're going to remove that last small amendment. Is that clear? Okay.
Mayor, you can donate it to District 3. We'll be happy to accept it.
All right, let's call the question on item 1K. Is there any opposition?
I'm opposed.
I'm opposed.
We have 2 opposed. Item passes 5-2. All right. That'll conclude the consent agenda as well as the contested consent agenda. What we're going to do is knock out just a couple of these outstanding items throughout the agenda, and then we'll circle back to the budget. We'll take public comment on budget and then pass the final budget. So 10 a.m. item number 1 was tabled. We'll move over to the 10 a.m. item number 2. This is a hearing on CFD number 11 in District 7, Armstrong and East Floridora. I'll go ahead and open the public hearing at this time, if anybody has public comment on the 10 a.m. number 2 item. I don't have any cards or see anyone here in the chamber. Let's see if there's anyone on Zoom who would like to speak to 10 a.m. item number 2. We have a few folks. So the first speaker is going to be Alexandros Acero. Alexandros? Okay, we'll move on to the next speaker. I think we have some technical difficulties on that end. Alice Vallejo. Alice Vallejo? Oh, okay, hands down. Cindy. Cindy, are you with us? We're public comment on 10 a.m. item number 2. Okay, I don't see anyone else bunched up on Zoom. No one in the chamber. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing for 10 a.m. item number 2. Oh, actually, we have Lisa Flores, who just punched up on Zoom.
Nelson, this has been always a concern for the last couple of years, is when you announce the item, could you tell us what it is for those of us playing at home without an agenda in front of us, please?
Yes, Lisa, and I did. I said it was a hearing to adopt CFD, that's a Community Facilities District number 11 in District 7 at Armstrong and
thank you.
Floridora. I did say that at the beginning.
Okay, thank you. I must have missed it.
Okay, we have Cindy on Zoom. Cindy, are you with us? Okay, yeah, so we'll go ahead and close the public hearing, again, for the 10 a.m. item number 2, the CFD number 11. I'll make a motion to approve the item.
Second that.
All right. Is there any opposition to approving the 10 a.m. item number 2? All right. Seeing none, item passes 7-0. Move on to the 10:05. Is it 10:05? It's 10:20, yeah. Move on to the 10:05 a.m. item. Hearing to consider the proposed annual assessment for the City of Fresno Landscaping and Lighting Maintenance District, number 1. So I'll go ahead and open the public hearing on the 10:05 a.m. item number 1. Anyone in the chamber or anyone on Zoom wish to speak on the 10:05 a.m. item on the Landscaping and Lighting Maintenance District, number 1?
Motion to approve.
Okay, I'll close the public hearing. There's a motion to approve. I'll second that. Is there any opposition to approving the 10:05 a.m. item number 1? Seeing none, item passes 7-0. Move on to item 4A, which is a resolution by Councilmember Soria. I'll let you introduce that.
Thank you, Council President. So today I'm introducing a resolution to initiate an amendment to the general plan and zoning map under FMC 15-5803B. The purpose of this rezone is to begin the process of establishing a linear park on the property currently known as the Emerson Avenue Median Island and currently is zoned as landscape. For those of you that are not familiar of this area, this is right across the street from Lions Park. This median island is large, grassy property that is completely underutilized in the current state, but it is utilized by the community. They use it to walk their pets, their dogs. Some folks use it for running, and so what the intent is to make sure that we can transform the median island by installing a walking trail, trees, benches, and of course, establish the whole property as neighborhood green space. This would also allow this property to qualify for any future grant dollars that the state may allow for parks or even parks dollars here. So I've been working on just investing in this area in the last 2 years, but I think that this would be very beneficial to increase green space in this neighborhood. So with that, I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second you, and we'll, before we have any discussion, I'll go out to the public for public comments. So are there any speakers in the chamber or on Zoom who would like to speak with respect to item 4A that you just heard from Councilmember Soria on? We have one speaker. Do you want to come on down?
I would like to address the comment. There are people homeless in our community. Instead of seeking to build up an area for the resident, why don't we take advantage of the money the government gives the state to build some homeless shelters, and also they can work on the land? I don't understand it. We have no more morals or values. That's my comment.
All right, any further public comments on item number 4A? Come on down, yeah.
Peace be with you. Well, what I see is, if you guys want to make those salaries like the supervisors, why don't you run for their jobs, you know, instead of trying to keep up with the Jones.
So, Fernando, we actually passed that item already, but if you have a comment on item 4A, which is the general plan amendment and rezone of the property on North Emerson Avenue.
All right. No comment on that.
All right. Thank you. So on Zoom, I have Lisa Flores.
First, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, first I want to thank future Assemblywoman Soria for looking at opportunities to expand and enhance green space in District 1, which is example of shining leadership. And I'm sorry you're not going to get that pay raise, Esmeralda. But I'm sure I'll make up for it later. I'll make you some tamales or something. But My only concern with this strip of land, is this where the high tension wires are? And has any sort of review regarding health concerns regarding those high wires and placing any sort of passive park infrastructure there been assessed at this point? But either way, I think it's a very good idea. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any further public comments on item 4A? Seeing no one in the chamber, seeing no one on Zoom, we'll go ahead and close public comments. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion by council on item 4A? All right. Any opposition to approving item 4A? Seeing none, the item passes 7-0. Yep, okay. All right, let's move on to the final items of the day related to the budget, the fiscal year 23 budget. This will be the last public item we have today. So, City Manager, I know you wanted to say something. I'll let you kind of lead it off, and we'll go from there.
Okay, thank you so much, Council President. So, thank you to the council. The entire council during budget hearings are very thoughtful conversations, questions. We appreciated the clarity of the motions that were made so that it made our team's job easier. Thank you to the council subcommittee for all of the work over the last few days. But as equally important, I want to specifically thank our staff. Putting together multiple billion-dollar budget with over 4,000 employees is no easy task. I know council mentioned it previously. The staff was here till 3 a.m. last night trying to put the final touches, but I want to specifically name names because I think it's important. The fearless budget office leader, Henry Fierro. Henry, thank you so much. And assisted by the entire budget team, Elise Munoz, Myra Aguilar, Juan Rios Ramos, Pedro Rivero, Scott Motzenbacher, Alita Rubio, Alma Torres, our deputy city manager. We could not have done it without her, keeping it straight for the mayor and I. Alma, thank you. She too was on the late shift this morning. We called and woke her up at about 6:30 this morning with questions. Also, department directors. It is a lot of work to put together all of the responses for council, so thank you for all of your efforts, and to your department finance staff and all of your support staff. So this was a complete, total team effort between the administration and the council and all of the support staff. So thank you so much to everybody. I look forward to whatever discussion we'll have here today, but I just wanted to put that on the record. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Council President.
Absolutely. So before we proceed with any motions or passing the final budget, we will take public comments on the final budget. So we did hear public comment from each department individually as we went through. But again, we wanted to provide public an opportunity to comment before we take a final vote. So again, if you're in the chamber, would like to speak on the final budget, please fill out a yellow card, bring it up to the clerk. If you're on Zoom, please raise your hands. And we will go ahead and call on you. So we'll start on Zoom, and we'll work our way over to the chamber as cards come in. So first on Zoom is going to be Gloria Hernandez.
I'm sorry, I just jumped on. So could you please tell me if the city manager or the mayor identify what the 487,500 is going for on the special project?
Gloria, this is your time to speak to us. We won't be, the council or the mayor won't be responding, but it's your time to provide us public comments.
Okay, well, it's hard to make a comment when we don't know what the special project is and why it jumped, 22% from 22,500.
If I may answer the constituents' call, that fund is specifically to fund community events. So the Christmas parade, the Veterans Parade, Pride Parade, that's a fund that funds all the community events and pays for road closures, police staffing of all those community events that are approved by the council.
So why was it such a big jump from 22,500 to 487,500? That's my concern as a taxpayer.
Simply put, it used to be in multiple pots, and we all put it in one pot now.
Ah, okay. Thank you for the explanation. I'm done.
Okay, next speaker on Zoom is going to be Lisa Flores.
Good morning. I know this is going to probably sound like a really silly question, but with the city council proposing themselves to get a 15% pay raise, first off, I don't think that's a really good idea, guys. Should be more about a 5 or 7. And also to the residents, the voting public should actually vote on it in November because, it is our money. The second question I have is the gentleman that works the mic here in City Hall, is there a line item for his compensation as far as hazardous pay for the time in which City Hall has been open, and he does such a fabulous and great job, and he runs the risk of exposure at every meeting because he encounters so many folks. And I'm just wondering, is there a special line item compensation for him for hazardous pay? If not, I personally would love to see one given to him about, say, maybe 5 or 10 grand would be really good. And that's about it. Thank you.
All right, we're going to come over to the chamber. We have a card from earlier, Gabriel Lozano.
Good morning, council members and mayor. I'd just like to give a little bit of history of, I'm from the responsible residents of Southeast Fresno, but formerly of Subsida. And I've worked through Subsida probably about 11 years. Every year I worked for Subsida, I was below the poverty line. I never complained because I kind of the time that Councilmember Bredefeld said that we take a responsibility to serve, and I understand that. But I also agreed with Councilmember Arias in that you give up a lot of your personal time, your development with your kids. My daughter lives in Tennessee, and it's our relationship has suffered because of that, the commitment I made. I've not only done office work, but I've worked out in the park. And as far as the park project, I used to work in the office, work in the community, then go work. That's physical work. I've slept out at the park 3 days to meet your deadline to keep our agreement and planted 50 trees. In the 100-degree weather, we watered them trees with, Bruce Rudd was a city manager at that time. Them hoses were heavy. I'm 55 years old. That's hard, laborious work. I thought I was back in the great fields again, working as, as a laborer, So I'm not asking for a handout. I want to work. I agree with the raise, and I thought I reflected on the amount, and I did agree with it because you're asking the same thing I'm asking tentatively. Breaking it up is good because I think that's you're willing to negotiate and have open ears, and that's what you do. You work for the public and you work alongside the public. So the difference between your situation and my situation is you're the brand situation. I'm the generic version of what's going on. And as far as Subsida, they do good work. They do good work in the community, and we work without at-risk kids. As far as homelessness, I'm asking for relief in rent. I'm asking for a lot of that stuff. I don't want that stuff. I need it, but I'd rather work for it. And so that's why I ask you to support some proposals that Subsida has put in, because I want to go to work. I want to make a difference. You want to combat homelessness? There's 8 kids on the Roosevelt football team, 8 kids that are foster kids. Once they graduate, they're homeless. We need to deter that. If you want to make the situation, and I'm going to tell you, I'm just along there with them. I'm behind on my rent. I'm behind on my PG&E. I'm days within probably going out in the streets. But I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to complain. I'm going to be part of the solution. It won't break me. And I will be a proud American that served because I gave a commitment to this country to make it better. And I'd rather sacrifice myself to help the ongoing. And I want to be part of the solution, not the problem. Thank you for your time as always. And I'd like all you council members. I'd like to give a shout out to Councilmember Chavez and Brendan Rapida and Lucio Avila. Thank you. You guys have hearts of gold. And Councilman Esparza, I like District 7, District 5, how they're represented in my barrio. Thank you very much. As all of you, be safe and have a great day.
Our next speaker will be on Zoom. That's going to be Astrid Morales.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, welcome.
Okay. Hello, good morning, Council. My name is Astrid. My pronouns are she, hers, and I work in Fresno as a youth organizer. When finalizing the budget, I ask that you think about your community members. We are the majority, but we're not the priority. We work to survive, not to live like past generations. I am 22, unable to afford a home and rent on my own. There are so many people struggling with housing right now, choosing between feeding ourselves or paying rent. Youth I know, foster youth, are selling their bodies in order to pay for rent because they got kicked out at 18. We need community-based solutions. We deserve more than $2 million toward an eviction protection program, funding for rent stabilization, $3 million for homeowner and rent assistance, $3 million for housing improvements and rehabilitation projects, and $1 million for a tiny homes community open to everyone, regardless of immigration status. Council members, I want you to remember that your community members also do hard work and they're also underpaid, but they don't have the luxury to increase that by simply asking. I want you to think about us, who are struggling so much that we can't even think about buying a house. We can't even think about paying for higher education. We cannot even think about having a future because we can't even afford the state we're living in right now. I ask that you take a look around to our houseless folks, our foster youth, students fresh out of college like me, who have no idea what the next steps are going to be, and our families here in Fresno. I ask that you fund our futures with the demands I listed. I understand that, we're doing the budget is incredibly difficult. I understand that. But just as you're funding yourselves, I ask that you fund our futures or at least meet us halfway. And really just think about your community, and thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Okay, next speaker, Zoom, is going to be Kimberly McCoy.
Good morning. My name is Kimberly McCoy, Project Director for Fresno Building Healthy Communities. Today, you get to vote on a budget that will not work for our communities. Community members have tirelessly demanded a change within the housing budget. Community members spoke out for more money given to our parks. Community members made it clear that the general fund awards too much money to our police department. Residents talked about how they need to see better options for transportation in this budget. Community members spoke about how ARPA dollars are not going back into our neighborhoods to recover from COVID-19. Community members demanded that a community program like Advanced Peace receive the funding it deserves. Advanced Peace has since been asked to reapply for money that was already allocated for them in the first place. How is this listening to the voices of our community? Throughout the budget hearings, we have heard every public comment from community members demanding that this budget works for us. But after the motions last week, these comments were not heard. All the things that matter to our residents are yet again not prioritized in this budget: housing, safety, parks and recreation, transportation, valuable community programs, and health. But what is a priority is a healthy raise for you all. That raise that you would like to have should not come at the expense of community and our needs. If this budget passes, the community will not gain any raises, just more obstacles for safety, housing, healthcare, outdoor space, and transportation. I hope you have listened to your community, and I urge you to reconsider this budget and make us a priority. Thank you.
Next on Zoom is going to be Carla Martinez.
Hi, my name is Carla Martinez, a policy advocate with Leadership Council.
First, while the City Council has appropriated many funds towards infrastructure projects, $2 million for the eviction protection program, and $800,000 for a comprehensive climate plan, we still need more around housing. $3 million for a homeownership and rent assistance program, regardless of immigration status, funds toward housing and rehabilitation projects, $1 million for tiny home community pilot projects, and so much more. All programs taken from the Here to Stay report, which the council still has not taken action on. Fresno continues to make headlines in our papers as having some of the highest rental increases in the nation and will only get higher as the years go by. How many more families, children, and mothers will we continue to see struggle even as the city has a healthy budget and ARPA dollars available to begin to rebuild a healthy economy for all? Y'all still have a chance to make changes in this budget, and I hope you pay attention to community as many have made comments throughout these last couple weeks. Thank you.
Next on Zoom is going to be Brandy N.
Hello, thank you. There are a lot of things I want to thank you for that are on the budget motions that I didn't have as much time to get on there regarding ADA safety plans, food vendor safety, money to engage hard-to-reach communities, legal defense for immigrants. So I recognize there's a lot of great things. I want to continue to ask, we gave you a very well researched and thought out list of things that would help with housing that other people have mentioned. So I asked that those would be as well. I want to echo what I was saying earlier and expand on that for that. Well, what also that advanced piece would be on in the budget and not just apply for that. I want to see, you heard the voices of those who are unhoused and how powerful it is and how much they have to say. I would like to see the Office of Community Relations not only funded, but expanded to have a office that works with the unhoused where they are actually there to be there for the unhoused and give them a voice, and start a lived experience committee of people who are unhoused or just formerly unhoused that could speak up on those things. I would like to see that $10 million that is going to Heart Police and Heart Code Enforcement go to things like a job program that could be developed that would help those who are unhoused be able to get jobs, to be able to get clothing for jobs, for places to be able to wash up, to see that guarantee for the one. I was asked for more than $1 million for the tiny homes. For affordable housing projects to be guaranteed to go to those who are in the shelters and on the streets, as well as those who are formerly incarcerated and at risk. I would like to see that money go to mental health triage, to mental health workers, everyone being trained in mental health that are working with the homeless, as well as a mental health professional being on any outreach team. I would like to see that money go towards water stations where people can fill up water bottles so people will not struggle as much, and expansion that I've asked for with the warming and cooling centers for transportation, for vehicles just for transportation to help with them. I would like to see more comprehensive caseworkers and more wraparound services at the shelters as well as other places, for safe lots for RVs and cars, as well as for people to live in, for a program to help people who are in poverty or unhoused to be able to get their vehicle registration so that people aren't suffering more, as well as more sanitation services out here, so that and having the unhoused work with you to keep everything clean, because they want to get clean, to keep things clean, but they need those resources, as well as other things like senior centers and more things like Wi-Fi access for the community, as well as in the shelters. So as we were considering things, as well as the park things that were asked by CNC, there has been good asks, but there's a lot, the Parks Department was frustrated that so many
Brandy, thank you, but we're over 3 minutes now, but appreciate you getting your input as always. We're going to move on to the next speaker on Zoom, and that's Kyle Lopez Schmidt.
Good morning, Council, and thank you for your deliberations on this budget. First, echoing the community speakers before me and the consideration that they're asking for, support those. Two specific items that I'd like to see included in this budget that I don't see in any of the motions is increasing the budget for the Tower District specific plan update. It is currently funded to be the kind of minimum legal requirements for a specific plan, but there's a lot of elements within the scope of the consultants that did not get included that are going to make it a better, more inclusive community plan. And I support the council members to make a motion to increase that funding. And then the second is that I think our economic development department is severely underfunded. And specifically, I'd like to see some resources going towards economic development of mixed use developments. A lot of attention is put to attracting industrial users, and those create strong conflicts with communities, specifically disinvested and pollution burdened communities. But we have, through the general plan process, been really speaking a different vision for the city of Fresno that is much more mixed use, yet we're not putting enough energy into attracting and adequately resourcing mixed use development. So I'd like to see those resources go into the Economic Development Department. Thank you.
Okay, so I have no more yellow cards in the chamber. So again, if you're in the chamber and would like to speak, make sure you get a yellow card up here. Next on Zoom, we're going to have Pedro Navarro Cruz.
Good morning, Council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and thank you for all the hard work in creating this budget. I'd just like to say real briefly that I would like to see a 70% increase, but a 70% increase in compassion. That is, when you're creating this budget, I do feel that there is a lot of lack of compassion. In regards to housing, I do feel that we can do a lot more. It's great to see a lot of the ideas that folks have been pushing for being incorporated, but the way I think of it, at least for the point of view of the first-time homebuyer program, is what's the point of this program if you have these outside investors that are driving the cost of the down payment up? So if we want to make something significant for our families, then I would like to see some kind of policy where we're limiting folks from outside the Fresno area making investments in the housing market. That way, these new programs would have more of an effect. And other than that, as I mentioned, just a 70% increase. A lot of the folks on the council right now, y'all come from a background very related to the average person in Fresno. I just hope that you're digging deep enough, reflecting deep enough, and just thinking about what you would have liked to see when you were a child, right? What you would have liked to see when your parents were struggling. It's not really that hard to reflect. And I've spoken to many of you, and I think many of you are brilliant people and do have the heart for it. So just increase that 70% of compassion when you legislate. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, next on Zoom is going to be Cindy.
Okay, can you hear me this time?
Yes, good morning.
Oh, yay, I figured it out. Thanks. I'm still a little bit confused about the salary issue. Was there also something in that proposal, the initial proposal, that you were going to do away with you guys being able to control your raises and put it more out to the voters or the electorate? Or is that going to remain the same? Are we going to continue to go like it is now, where you guys determine your own raises? Hello? Oops, hello?
Yes, Cindy, we can hear you, but as I told the previous speaker, we typically do not respond to during public comment. Your time to speak to us.
Oh, okay. Well, let me just say then I am in agreement more with Councilman Bretterfield and what his proposal is for these raises, and I would be in total agreement with a 15% raise in 2023, and then 3% and 3% after that. It seems to be because that 15% is playing catch up from 2018. So that would be 3% over 5 years, and then just continue on with 3% and 3%. I think that's a really healthy raise and comparable to what your constituents are getting. So that's that. And then I would also like to something in there to where this doesn't happen again like this, where like it's kind of like overnight it came to our attention through the media that, wow, they just voted in a 70% raise for themselves. And everyone that I know, at least all my friends say, well, when did that happen? How did that happen? And then everyone got in an uproar. So I would like it to somehow get it out of the hands of you guys, determining your own pay raises. I mean, I don't know of too many jobs where, I get to determine my own raise or something. Anyway, so that's all I have to say. And thank you for reconsidering it. And that's all I have to say today.
All right, coming back to the chamber, we have Jose Leon Barraza.
President Nelson Esparza, members of the council, I'd like to thank you all for this exciting new budget. I'm excited, actually, because for the first time I've seen $10 million allocated to nonprofits. And we want to see and we want to hold nonprofits responsible. We all should be accountable. We want to see what changes occur in the community after we invest that much money. And in addition to that, there are other allocations that are targeting concentrated poverty in our community, and that's very important. I also thank Mayor Jerry Dyer because he acknowledged the discrepancies we have in our community, and we're dealing with that, and that is very positive, and that's the positive. There are some things that happen here that are not very positive, but that happens to be very good, and I want to thank you for your vision. I want to thank Councilmember Luis Chavez for being the council member for District 5, that he understands the challenges. Councilmember Nelson Esparza, he also includes Southeast Fresno, that we live and represent there, and that's so nice. And Councilmember Soria, and one of the motions she made, she acknowledged the role of nonprofits in economic development. And I hope we all understand that we need more wealth in our community. We need to deal with poverty, and we need to invest. And your council, I believe this is historic. You are doing a tremendous job in bringing resources to the community, and I wanted to say on behalf of the Board of Directors of Subsida, thank you very much, all of you.
Next in the chamber, we're going to have Christopher Washington.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, good morning, Fresno City Council. Today is June 30th, 2022, and I would like to submit this short comment for your consideration. As a resident of Fresno, I want to plan routes where I call home and not worry about displacement or eviction. No matter what we look like, how much money we have in our wallets, or what district we live in, we want a stable and safe place to call home. In times past, I have approached this council with suggestions in which I believe could increase and enhance our community and combat this displacement. I recently used examples of transformative justice in comparison to state practices, with an emphasis on transforming the lives of many through compassion by allocating resources to the disenfranchised people of Fresno. We thank the council for approving $2 million to go towards the eviction protection program and $50,000 for the tenant relocation benefits ordinance. And we know that this is just the start. We are demanding $6 million annually in funding to ensure that this is a comprehensive program with targeted outreach, education, a hotline to support tenants, and legal representation. We need to continue to fund specific programs and services that keep people in their homes now. This should not be a game of the weak being ostracized by the rich or anyone taking an unjust advantage of others. And this time, I'm seeking that this council take specific actions to assist the formerly incarcerated, displaced community of Fresno. Because in simplicity, it all boils down to this. We need to allow the formerly incarcerated community to start over. Here in Fresno, the unemployment rate is very high. Part of the reason why the unemployment rate is high is because the incarceration rate is high. The incarceration rate since 2013 here in Fresno is 53%. The unemployment rate in Fresno, 22%. The unemployment rate of West Fresno, 38%. The incarceration rate was only 6% above the state average in 2010, 39% in 2011, and 50% above the state average in 2012, and 56% above the state average in 2013. The extent to which local jail numbers are driven by incarceration for nonviolent offenses requires further investigation, but with an estimate of 63%. I think finally, by grit lacking institutional and systemic sabotage in this area, we will give hope to many young men who have, although made crazy decisions before, in learning the errors of their way, will be able to start over. A convicted felon that is on the path, a better path, future, when post-incarceration should not be held to the stigma and false paradigm of the past. Hiring formerly incarcerated people would increase the dedication, morale, and appreciation of the freedom that was bestowed upon them. Housing formerly incarcerated people, though, is the step we need to take to transform lives. Thank you.
Our next speaker on Zoom is going to be Des Martinez.
Hello?
Yes, welcome, Des.
Hi, and thank you. I wanted to echo all the advocates that have spoke before me. I think a lot of people have worked tireless hours on how to approach city council and beg for help. You guys are getting your raise, and I know you guys put in a lot of work, from roads to homelessness to crime. I mean, it's a lot. But think about the advocates that spoke before you. Think about everything that they're asking. I'm sure some of them have voted some of you in, but they're asking not for a lot. They're asking for evenness across the board, that we all come together and figure out something. We all might not agree on everything together, you guys, but I'm pretty sure there's a medium somewhere. Even though we don't like each other, doesn't mean we still can't sit in a room and talk and come to the table with different things on different sides. But I hope you actually listen to them today, and not just listen to them, but hear them and also support them. I want to echo the support on advanced peace. Nobody likes to get down and dirty with the unhoused and the criminal elements and some of the gangs that we do have out here. They're the only ones that can come and help with that, because individuals will run from the suits, but they don't run from people that they do know and have something in common with. Cooling centers, you guys got enough money for cooling centers, so come on. I mean, we need to do something about the food. Stop talking about it. It's food and water, you guys. Why talk about it? Just give it to them. Each one of you city council members has enough. You can pay $4,000 a plate of food. You can definitely give $5,000 each to one of these community centers, and they can help with food and hygiene packets when they leave there. I mean, that would be something nice. I'm really interested on where these freaking showers are at. I am sick and tired of hearing we've had money put aside for them, then we took ARPA funds money for them. We still don't have these showers, and it can't be that you don't have enough employees, because Beautify Fresno gets 500 volunteers. They're always shouting about. Why can't they take those volunteers and use them for the showers? Where are these shower mobiles? It's 100 and something degrees outside, you guys. Come on. I'm concerned about also the special project funds, that they're gonna end up in the police pocket somehow, some way. But I'm pretty sure that a lot of advocates are now gonna keep their eyes on this. And I really hope no more funds are taken from us that can beautify our city and actually be one Fresno together. That's it. I really hope you listen to all the advocates. We just need to figure something out, you guys. Figure something out. That's it.
Okay, I don't have any more yellow cards here in the chamber. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak with respect to the final vote on the budget, either in person or on Zoom? We have Ana Medrano. On Zoom.
Yes, I'm just chiming in right now, but I am definitely opposed to the raise increase that you guys feel is appropriate right now.
Will that conclude your remarks?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. You still have 2.5 minutes. I was asking if you were done.
No, I'm not done. I really feel as though it's insulting to the community, for the homeless population, for the children who face food insecurities. For you guys to increase your wages like that is really insulting. I'm done.
Thank you. Next speaker on Zoom is going to be Ruben Espinoza.
Hello, good morning, Council. I'm going to keep my comments very brief, but I just wanted to uplift and echo all of the asks from the advocates who spoke before me regarding housing justice, the parks. And I also feel the same sentiment regarding the raises. We've been coming to these meetings to say that we've been struggling, and it's very embarrassing for us to do that. And the council wants to give themselves a raise. I understand that you guys work very hard, but we also work very hard, and we're struggling. And to see you guys give yourselves a raise while everybody comes out and pours their hearts out, pours out their sweat, and tells you their struggles, which is embarrassing for anybody. It just seems, not right. And with that, I'll conclude my comments. Thank you very much.
Okay, any further public comments? Seeing no one on Zoom, seeing no yellow cards in the chamber, go ahead and close public comments with respect to the budget items that we have today on the agenda. I do have a few folks punched up, but before we go there, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion. And my motion reads as such. On June 23rd, 2022, the council adopted budget motions 1 through 91, as well as 93, which resulted in the general fund for the proposed fiscal year 2023 budget being out of balance by approximately $60 million. Previously, $27 million from ARPA and $12.4 million in general fund carryover was appropriated by the council to fund public works for neighborhood infrastructure projects. This week, the administration and council budget subcommittee met to negotiate a resolution that would allow the council to adopt a balanced budget as required by the city charter. The annual appropriations resolution and related budget documents before us today accomplishes that requirement, or this requirement. A reconciliation summary sheet outlining the changes that are contained in the AAR, which is the annual appropriations resolution, has been distributed along with the budget documents. I'll go ahead and motion to adopt item 2C, which is the fiscal year 23 annual appropriations resolution.
Second that.
And related items 2A, 2B, 2D, 2E, and 2F. This motion shall supersede all previous budget motions.
Second, Council President.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. I do have folks punched up. So first I have Councilmember Arias, followed by Councilmember Soria.
Thank you, Council President. I do want to acknowledge to the administration my appreciation for the amount of time that they spent over the last 10 days in this budget process. As you know, when we approve this budget, the mayor proposes budget. It's a council's responsibility to make adjustments and adopt a final budget. Ultimately, the council made 94 changes to the mayor's budget. I think that was less than the 154 from the year before, so the mayor's getting better at kind of getting in line with council priorities. But ultimately, this budget does include about 79 of the 94 changes. A lot of the motions that were made in this dais through the budget deliberation process, we confirmed that they were already in the existing budget in some line items, and then we also found the funds within the budget to be able to fund approximately 79 of the 94 motions, while it being a balanced budget. A couple of highlights I want to point out is the number one crisis before us clearly is housing and homelessness. This budget responds to the council's wish to establish a housing division that's going to have 16 positions that are full-time, dedicated to producing more affordable housing units, developing shelters for the homeless, inspecting those shelters, ensuring that they're operating to the expectations of this body. And of those, that work, we also allocated about $50 million to fund new housing projects. That includes $40 million that is yet to be allocated. It also includes 4 new housing projects in my district alone, the conversion of 2 motels, the development of a single-family affordable, as well as the new acquisition of the motel that we approved today. Additionally, we heard from the public and the council that we wanted our parks to improve faster, for them to get greener, immediately. In the process, the administration brought forward a proposal to begin to outsource and add some additional external capacity to maintain and fix and improve some of our parks immediately. From their proposal, which is included in this budget, we will allocate an additional $300,000, and they will immediately outsource the improvements of approximately 18 parks and begin to immediately increase the amount of and the speed in which those parks are improved. Hopefully, we'll get going. I think they're scheduled to begin at the end of this month, but I do want to thank the administration. They heard from this council. Our director of parks heard from us that we wanted to make those improvements, given the Measure P commitment, much faster. We also heard from the public that gun violence and gang prevention needed to be a priority, specifically around advanced peace. This budget includes not only the $950,000 that was being proposed by the administration, but we added an additional $500,000 to fund other groups to do that. So total, we'll have $1.5 million for gun violence prevention and reduction in the city. And, focusing more on my district, those of you who visit downtown, you see the condition of our parking garages. This budget includes millions of dollars to make improvements to those parking garages immediately, so that folks can enjoy their visit to downtown when they're here for their entertainment. It also addresses some of the neighborhoods that have been left behind for generations. Specifically, it invests millions of dollars in repaving residential streets in the Tower District, which folks have been asking for and waiting for a while. The 95-year-old World War II veteran waiting for Kearney frontage to be, repaved for 40 years. This budget finally repaves that street. And as well as it includes a record amount across the city for neighborhood infrastructure. We made a commitment 2 years ago to begin to rebuild the city, starting with the oldest neighborhoods that were left behind. This budget does exactly that. It invests a record amount of resources in rebuilding the older parts of our city, and with new repaving of streets, curbs and gutters, safe routes to schools, sidewalks, crosswalks, bike lanes. It is reflective of the values of this body, that when we get a record amount of revenue, we're making a record amount of investment in our older neighborhoods. And lastly, I just want to point out that we're being intentional in this, budget, that we don't leave the small folks that sometimes are unseen. And that's why this budget includes $500,000 for mobile food vendors. Our mobile food vendors never stopped working during the pandemic. They never got millions of dollars of PPE relief from the state and the federal government. They didn't qualify for a lot of the relief during the pandemic, but yet they kept on working, trying to figure out how to pay their bills. And we recognize they're the most vulnerable in the city when it comes to their safety. This budget includes $500,000 to equip the rest of the mobile food vendors in our city with cameras, to pay for that service of cameras for 5 years, to retrofit their carts to ensure that they meet health and safety standards. And that's just, for me, one of the highlights, that at the same time that we made our police officers and firefighters the highest paid in the Central Valley, that we gave salary increases to every labor group in the city, where we're investing in older neighborhoods, that we are also investing in the smallest business owners that we have in our city. So with that, thank you, Mayor, for spending hours and hours with us in the room, going item by item, and making sure that this budget reflects the priorities of this council, and that every person in the city was recognized and invested in during this budget cycle.
All right, we have Councilmember Soria, followed by Councilmember Chavez.
Thank you, Council President. I want to first say thank you to everyone that has been involved with the budget. This is my last budget, so it's bittersweet for me. And this is, I think, the first year that I wasn't involved with the council budget and the negotiation at the end, so I did miss a bit about that. And that's why I have a few questions for clarification, because even though I leave later at the end of the year or by January, I want to make sure that some of the projects that I've been working on continue to be funded so that my predecessor can see them out. But one of the motions that I had made was for Fire Station 12, and I do recognize that there is some dollars that were included as part of the reconciliation summary, which is the $3.45 million. City Manager, will that be enough to cover the construction cost of Fire Station 12?
No, that will not cover the total construction cost. We are going to be sitting down. We have actually for the last 10 days, the fire chief, public works, city attorney's office, to have a very clear path and forward as to what impact fees can be used and what general fund commitment is required in order to be able to fund the construction of that station. There has been discussion about bonding, and there would be a general fund component of that. And then we are also, so we are still working on the final calculations as to how much of the station can be funded with impact fees and how much can be funded with general fund. And this was we think that we're in the ballpark with the general fund portion with this $3.458 million commitment, and as I said, we're finalizing the details on the split. We do know that a large portion can be funded with impact fees, but we're finalizing the discussions on that to make sure that we're legally defensible on the use of impact fees.
What's the timeline on that?
I would say within weeks. Unfortunately, I think the conversation started a little late in that there, I think, was a misunderstanding that the station could be entirely funded with impact fees. And as we were continuing those discussions, it was, we had to clarify that no, it can't be 100% funded with impact fees. And so then we went down the path of, well, how much is impact fees and how much is general fund, so that we could put some sort of placeholder in the budget. And we're not 100% complete with those discussions, but as I said, I think we're in the ballpark with the general fund. I think we're pretty close in the ballpark.
So is it safe to say that within 30 days we can come back and have like the final plan as to what sources of funding will be utilized for the construction of Fire Station 12?
I think within 30 days we'll definitely have the plan of what the sources that are needed. And we'll probably need to have further discussion with the council as to how we want to approach if there is a larger general fund commitment, and whether or not if we have to go to the bond market or if there's sufficient impact fees to pay for the remainder that's needed for the full construction costs.
How long will that timing be after we figure out the sources of funding? And the only reason that I'm asking this, and I want to put it for the record, what's important for me, even though I'm leaving, that this public facility that is much needed gets built. We already have control of the property, and the longer we wait, the greater the cost.
Understood.
And so, I'm being mindful of that, and so that's why I'm trying to figure out, in terms of the timing.
Yeah, I can assure you the fire chief is regularly pinging me on, what do you need now? What information do we now? Can we get together? And so she has certainly fulfilled her commitment to sit down with Public Works and the attorney's office. I think 30 days, I think I think we'll have a very clear understanding of the lay of the land. And then depending on that, if we can fund the remainder, the rest of the $8-ish million with impact fees, problem solved. If there's a delta still, then that is a little more difficult of a conversation because we'll have to determine whether or not we want to go to the bond market or not.
Okay. And similarly, I know that part of my motion had included looking at bond financing for the training facility or figuring out also similarly the gap. I think it's going to be critical that as a body, we do have a plan moving forward. I think I remember being here on year one, attempting to pay off the bonds, get the best credit rating, and over the 8 years, we've had stellar credit rating because we've been diligent about taking care of our finances and the investments that we've made. We are obviously a growing city, and a lot of these facilities are extremely critical for the future of our community. And so wanting to make sure that right now, given the financial standing of our city, that we maximize the opportunity to build now rather than 5 years later when it will be much more expensive. So to that end, will your guys' plan also include looking at the financing mechanisms for, we have $25 million that I know that myself, along with the administration and some of my council colleagues, worked hard so that Sacramento can put in the last year's budget. And so I don't want to have to see that money continually just sit in the budget without some real action and implementation of that.
Councilmember, the same discussion with regard to the impact fee general fund split is happening along on the regional training center discussions as well. And, we have a lot of public facility needs, and, we are also considering if we have to go to the bond market, do we want to do one big one? Do we want to do multiple small ones? We have some pretty serious crises at some other public safety facilities as well. So yes, we're having those discussions. They're within the same constraints as the Station 12 discussion about the the impact fee split versus general fund split. So they're happening at the same time.
So it's safe to say that within 30 days, that's when we will know kind of comprehensively.
We'll know the split.
Funding.
We'll know the funding split requirement.
Mm-hmm.
Do I think we'll have an answer in 30 days on how we're going to fund, a $55 million regional training center in addition to Station 12, in addition to Station 10, in addition to Station 21, and public police headquarter improvements? I don't think I'll have all the answers on all of those dollars, but I'll definitely have a lay of the land of how much general fund will be required as opposed to impact fee.
And can we anticipate having a plan before the end of the year so that in terms of how we will go about covering those splits that you're talking about?
Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
Okay. I just want to have a clear, timeline for the record moving forward. So I appreciate that. My next question is related to Quigley Park. I think I have brought this over and over. Wanted to understand what is included in the reconciliation summary for Quigley. I had made a motion for $4 million.
There is not anything included for Quigley. However, we did increase the council infrastructure line item substantially. And for those specific motions that weren't funded for a specific project, we are appointing council members to the $1.5 million per district available for infrastructure improvements. That it is general fund / ARPA, so it could be spent on phase, the design or the first phase of Quigley. A portion or all of that could be used, but you are correct in that there was not the $4 million included for Quigley.
City Manager, if I may just clarify as a member of the committee, what staff informed us is that in order to fund, in essence, $20 million of new park motions, that staff would have to essentially defund existing parks projects in the proposed budget in order to be able to fund the new ones. We felt as a committee that it wasn't really in our best interest to, select what items to remove from what's being planned in the Parks Department for each council district in order to fulfill some of the new motions. So we felt best to ensure that all new park projects were at least funded in the design phase for 23. And then the council member of that area would then be able to spend time with the Parks Director to see whether they wanted to remove some of the planned projects out in order to be able to fund the new ones. But we essentially did that across the board for all the project was to fund the design phase so that we wouldn't have to artificially remove some of the proposed parks in each district.
So can I ask, and I don't know if city manager or the parks director, what would it take to fund the design of Quigley? We already had some preliminary stuff which we had utilized for Prop 68 application. I just want to make sure that the dollars are allocated, given that Quigley continues to be the #1 park in need to renovate per our Parks Master Plan done in 2018.
So, Councilmember, Aaron Aguirre, Parks Director. I know we have the master plan as part of the Prop 68 submission. We really have to take those out to consultant selection and go through the design process. I know we have the master plan based on community outreach and input, really be developing those construction plans, getting them ready for bid.
But what is that total amount that it would cost for the design, this next design phase? So we've done the preliminary, which we use for Prop 68. I'm curious to know if that $1 million will be sufficient. That's why I had motion for $4 million. I want to begin the design so that when I'm gone, someone has the ability to, in the next budget, include the actual dollars. We already know that we didn't qualify for Prop 68. We've gone twice. So what that is telling the city is that we are going to have to find either through Measure P or general fund allocation to fund the renovations of this park.
Correct. So the design, we've looked at other parks, similar nature, size, and amenities based on the master plan, and we feel the $1 million will cover the design, construction documentation, and any additional environmental work that needs to be completed.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Then I also had made a motion, city manager, for the Emerson, which is part of kind of the project that I'm trying to do in terms of rezoning the Emerson Median Island. I had made a motion to fund the carryover, but I noticed that only $250,000 was kept. Is there a reason why the carryover was eliminated?
So the way we did a lot of new projects were we had discussions with staff about what can actually be spent in '23. So, for instance, because as you know, we usually have to do design, engineering in 1 year, and then the following year tends to be construction. And so I think the estimate that we got for '23 was that half would be, I'm looking at my notes here, that half would be able to be spent in fiscal year '23. So that was why we cut it down to the 250.
So $1 million that I put in, that I had transferred from carryover, which is for this fiscal year, was knocked down to 250. Is that correct?
Can you hold on a second? Let me look at my notes.
Or is that in addition to the 1 million?
Okay, so you're saying, okay, so there may be a misunderstanding here. So you're saying that this was funded in '22 at $1 million?
Yep. I had $1 million for Emerson Island allocated in fiscal year '22.
So can we pause on that and have staff look that up and we'll get clarification on that? That part wasn't in my notes, so we'll double check on that. And if we could come back around to you, that would be great.
Awesome. The next question that I have, I did notice that Councilmember Arias said $300,000 for the maintenance of some of the parks.
Yes.
Which was an issue that I also brought up and thought that it was critical. Is 300,000 really gonna get us there?
So that's just for 23. The staff had identified the ability to free up some resources right now in 22 from the $22. And so they were getting those encumbered and putting those into the works right now. So it was just 300 for additional for fiscal year 23. And that would result in the greening of a total of 38 parks.
Like 40 parks, I think it was.
38 or 40.
What would be the total amount, I guess? Because 300 just seems low.
Let me find my notes on that one too, if you can hold on a second.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know this is what happens when you're not part of the budget committee. Sorry, guys.
No.
You want to come up, Parks Director?
It's a public works creation. So let me just find, I've got it here. So do you have the picture that showed the dollars in 22? Oh, 222 and 323. Thank you, Erin.
So a little bit over $500,000.
Yes.
And that would be spent in what time period?
Come on up, Erin.
I'm just wondering, what is the plan? Is 500,000 really enough for 40 parks to get them up to? Yeah. Okay.
So, Councilmember, Public Works is spending $200,000 in some savings they found in FY22, and the 300 would be in FY23. I believe they have those vendors under contract now. I think they're looking at 3 vendors, Brian? 3 vendors that would be assigned approximately 7 parks.
Can't find that picture that I have.
Starting with 9, we'll go up to 18 parks. So what they'll do is they'll go through, they'll assess the systems, make repairs, and continue that on in 23 as well.
Okay, and so so I'm trying to understand what they're going to be doing, because one of the issues that I've seen is the grass is just inexistent. So are they planting grass? Are our teams going to do that piece? Because I know that irrigation is a problem.
That's the main focus, is irrigation. A huge portion of these additional resources are geared towards irrigation, because if you don't start with irrigation, it doesn't matter what we do. So that is predominantly what the focus is on irrigation repairs.
And then is our city staff going to do the reseeding and the mowing of the lawns and the trimming of trees? Just because what I've seen is that that's not happening as consistently to keep up with the maintenance of the parks.
So what we're talking about is more of an expedited greening. It doesn't ultimately include additional funding for did it? Hold on a second. I just got to find the document.
So, Councilmember, to speak about the reseeding and the kind of turf management piece of it, Public Works actually has staff. They did this past year. If you look at some of our parks.
What parks? Because mine are bad.
Right. If you go by, they went just recently to Dickey Park, and they reseeded, they fertilized with a kind of a summer blend, which is Bermuda. So they've gone through and done that, and in the winter they've gone through, they'll do like we did at the sports complex with a winter rye. So they have kind of a turf management piece in their operating budget that they go through and work with us on prioritizing those parks for the reseeding.
Councilmember, I just found my notes, so thank you for giving me a second. Okay, so the plan is, beginning July 5th, Public Works is going to have the vendors evaluating the irrigation systems by July 5th. 18 parks, Public Works will assign 18 parks to 3 vendors to tackle repairs and improvements. With the additional $300,000 from fiscal year 23, that will increase the workflow to an additional 20 parks. So that is almost 38, that is 38 parks. The goal is greener parks in 42 days. Goal is to evaluate and repair the first 18 parks within 42 days of project launch, and the remaining parks in the weeks following. The goal is landscaping division is making the parks greener and efficient watering systems, creating cooler, cleaner space for residents to enjoy. So we're predominantly focused on the greening and in response to, you know, the dead, dying ground, bare ground. So we're predominantly focused on greening. We do have tree contract, you know, our tree trimming contractor. I know they've been adding crews as we've added money to the budget. So yes, ultimately tree trimming is a part of it, but this initial very quick 42-day plan is predominantly focused on the greening of the parks.
Does that include also, so it's kind of like the landscaping, the mulch? Because I know in like specifically Inspiration Park, all of the mulch is really gone from some of the, you know, the landscaping. So who is in charge of that? Is that part of this greening effort?
No, that effort you speak about, Councilmember, is with Public Works in their operating budget. They do have a vendor out there that is working through that. So they're working with the landscape vendor on site, but that would be completely separate from this $500,000.
Okay. So how do we make sure then that the dollars allocated in this budget do address that? Because that is part of the fixing of making the parks look better. I understand there's the irrigation portion, the tree trimming portion, the reseeding portion, but it seems like, you know, all these pieces are critical so that they actually beautify the park in its totality.
And Councilmember, once again, I just want to remind everybody that we have received, we haven't had Measure P dollars for a full year yet. So I completely understand and appreciate everybody's desire to, you know, why aren't we seeing the improvements yet? And so given that we just have gotten the full year of revenue in and have expended, you know, planning for the dollars, and we're moving as fast as we can with, and we think that this is a plan that makes sense, that takes moving as fast as we can without jumping ahead and going out and doing things like planting and putting things down when we're going to have to turn around and dig things up to fix irrigation systems. So we're trying to do it in an orderly and efficient manner while turning up the heat to move as quickly as possible so our residents can see the benefit of Measure P dollars in operation. So I totally get that we all want to see like our parks looking pristine immediately, as does the mayor. But the reality is we are moving as fast as we can given this new resource coming into the city for such a short amount of time.
Okay, thank you. And then the last thing I wanted to mention, I know that I made also a motion on to try to bring a PD type of facility, riding station, whatever you want to call it, west of the 99, and that wasn't included. And I'm okay if we can just start at least developing a plan, because I think the presence west of the 99 is extremely critical. It's harder to get police officers there. I will tell you that I hardly see patrols happening west of the 99. And so I want to figure out, you know, I don't know, over the next few months with the chief, I saw that nothing was included per my motion. And so I would like to sit down with you and the chief to figure maybe a plan out. I know that obviously part of it is hiring more officers, but there is that old fire station that is abandoned. If we're not going to use it as a public facility, do we have a plan for it? Because it just looks abandoned right there on Cornelia and Swift. So do we know?
So we are, honestly, I was just trying to get through budget, and I have a whole list of things to do after it, and I do have the Cornelia Swift budget on my list to talk with staff about. We are interested in pursuing a report writing system, location, not system, but we thought we do have a lot of other places in the city that we have businesses partnering with us to offer a space for our police officers to, you know, go in, have an air-conditioned spot to write a report, cool off, maybe use the restroom. And so we had discussed in our meetings that perhaps we could sit down and brainstorm and see if that's an opportunity before we go out and expend money on renting a space. So we were going to try that path first.
Yeah, I wasn't asking for the renting of space. We actually own the Cornelia and
I know.
Swift.
It requires significant improvements, though. In order to put people in there, it would require a pretty significant investment. It would have been cheaper for us to rent a very small office, but we were still going to try and go the free route. The Cornelia Swift is not a free route.
Okay. Well, I'd like to at least at some point sit down with you and figure out what we're doing with that space, because it's sitting there.
Okay. I do have an answer for you on the Emerson. So although you did make a motion last year, it was not funded. Similar to this process where the council makes several motions, when the reconciliation was done, that ultimately was not funded. So it wasn't $1 million carryover. So we looked at it as a new funding request. And while you requested $1 million, we did actually fund it with new money at the $250,000 level for design.
Okay, for the design. Okay,
Yes.
perfect. Thank you for that clarification. And then just lastly, I have a couple of comments. Again, thank everyone for the time that they've put to the administration, my colleagues, all the directors for the several departments. Thank you for also working with our office to make sure that the District 1 constituents are served and get the resources that they need to improve quality lives in our neighborhoods. I do want to just say that I am extremely proud of what we see as a whole in the budget, just because I remember year one, and Georgianne, it's funny because you were sitting there not here, you were with the administration on the other side. And so it's amazing to see what has transpired over the last 8 years. I remember that year advocating for $1 million to begin a housing trust fund. While that didn't happen in 2015, I will say that I'm proud that over the years there has been a recognition from our council, from city staff, that we are in a housing crisis, and that today there's over $40 million being allocated to figure out how we tackle not just the housing affordability issue, but the homelessness issue that is in extreme crisis in our community. I know that there were several comments made by community about needing more resources to ensure that folks have a place to go if they're evicted, or have more affordable opportunities for housing, including tiny homes. Well, there is $40 million plus in this budget that over the course of the next few months, I know that we will be working with the mayor to have the strategic housing plan implemented, and that we see those dollars allocated to all those things that community members have actually outlined. So I want to make sure that folks are clear that there is millions of dollars in the tunes of over 40 millions that will be allocated for several of those things. Additionally, I'm reminded today that also in 2015, I had a press conference at Quigley Park, and while Quigley Park hasn't been renovated in the last 8 years, we've made attempts over 2 cycles to apply for Prop 68, and so that's a work in progress. We'll continue to work, and I hope that my predecessor spends time to continue that work and get it renovated. But that year, we asked for $1.5 million to essentially improve the deferred maintenance for parks across the city. We didn't get that in 2015. But today, I will say that we have a record amounts of invested dollars into parks. And I will proudly say that in District 1, by the time that I leave, there will be 2 brand new parks under construction, maybe 3 with the one in the Park West, but for sure on Fresno High area in the Echo, Van Ness, Weldon Triangle, and then also the Melbourne and Dakota. And again, that has been really a testament to the work that the community has advocated for additional investments through Measure P, and then also investments in our budget and putting more general fund dollars for green space in our community. Lastly, I'm also proud that when I first started, I was kind of a lone advocate for a job program for youth. I asked for $25,000 at the time. I think the vote ended up being like 4-3. We got a little bit amount. Today in this budget, not only have we allocated hundreds of thousands of dollars for council interns, but this administration and this budget includes millions of dollars for youth jobs here in the city of Fresno. And so I'm proud that some of those issues that I've been able to advocate for in the last 8 years have become a much greater reality. And we've seen a tremendous amount of investment, record investment from this council and the administration. So I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the investments from the federal government, that we wouldn't be here in this place if we wouldn't have received the ARPA dollars and even those dollars that we received during the COVID time, in addition to the investments that the state of California has made into our city. I will say that the future is bright in our community, that there is so much opportunity to continue to build and really improve the quality of life across neighborhoods, in particular in South Fresno, where historically they have been disinvested in. And I'm proud that this council has said no more, that we're going to triple down on investments, and we have, and that's what this budget does. So I want to thank everyone for working with my team, and then also my colleagues for the work that you guys did over the last 2 weeks to get this budget to the place that it is. Thank you, everyone, and with that, I will be supporting the final budget.
All right, we're gonna move on to Councilmember Chavez, followed by Councilmember Carbasi.
All right, thank you. That concludes Councilmember Soria's Greatest Hits Volume 1.
She said lastly about 5 times. I stopped believing after the third.
I'll be very brief. I just want to thank the administration, the mayor, my colleagues, Council President Esparza, Vice President Maxwell. I know how hard it is having served in that role last year, and watching the mayor sip down 4 Bang drinks and 6 Red Bulls during those negotiations. But I think we ended up with probably one of the best budgets that I've seen since I've been here in the building. We made a lot of key investments, but I want to especially thank the residents, particularly those that I met with. Had an opportunity to meet with some residents from the neighborhoods, and that's really how my list was brought forward. A lot of needs that they see in the community, from broken sidewalks to safe routes to school to pedestrian crosswalks, and obviously our parks. That was a big addition this year. Mr. Barrasso mentioned the park earlier. I think that's going to be a big amenity for our residents, and then some of the subsequent parks that we're able to start the process on this year. And I want to just briefly highlight, because I think this budget, I believe, will be probably one of the best ones. We know that the folks that predict a lot of the challenges ahead are talking about a recession and a downturn. I just want to make sure that we're prepared for that. Assistant City Manager Barfield, you've been here when it was slim pickings. City Manager, you've been here when it was slim pickings, and I just want to make sure we're thoughtful about what we're planning for later. Hopefully it's not as bad as people are predicting, but I want to make sure that we are prepared for that. I think what you'll see in this budget is key investments in the areas for a lot of the vulnerable folks. We obviously have resources for our homeless folks that we've been trying to work with and get them off the streets and into reliable housing. We also put in some money for our LGBT youth, and I want to thank those LGBT youth folks from Fresno Pacific University that met with me and advocated for some of the funding. Our immigrant population that we have here in the city, we invested in that too. And then obviously our renters. We know that with the lifting of the eviction moratorium, we expect our program to be utilized much more. And then obviously to our seniors, and bringing our senior hot meal programs back, funding the community center that I think will be historic for the city of Fresno. And then lastly, Measure V, I think is going to be critical and important for our veterans. That's something that we're going to be bringing forward here this upcoming month. My colleagues and I and the mayor, we're going to be working towards making sure that we communicate that to our residents, how important it is to establish this Veterans Memorial District for our veterans here in the city of Fresno. And with that, Council President, because I don't want to be accused of saying lastly 5 times, this is my last time. Thank you.
So we have Councilmember Carbasi, followed by the city clerk. Is that accent? Okay, that's right. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so Councilmember Carbasi.
Thank you. I'm just going to get my lastly in right now. No, thank you so much, Mr. President. So I'm going to focus on a lot of the good things that this budget does for Council District 2. This probably has the 23 fiscal year budget, the unprecedented investment in Council District 2, which is what's most important for my constituents. We're going to have investments in our parks. We have lots of upgrades to Logan Park. We're going to be continuing. Investments in Holman Park and also Orchid Park. So lots of upgrades there. There'll be improvements in neighborhood infrastructure and repaving of our roads and repairing our concrete sidewalks and gutters. There will also be citywide some increased rebates for water conservation to match CPI. We're going to be funding slurry seals on our streets, funding for upgrades to Pinedale. They're having their centennial. They're a very proud community, and we look forward to inviting the community to join us for that, but we have some work to do before we get there. We're also going to be doing one thing that's really important to me and raising more funds for our reserves. This is definitely different than what happened last year. We're going in the right direction. Not quite the 10% I wanted, but we're getting close. That's good. And then, one of the things that's really important to me is I mentioned the need, my one pledge, my one promise when I ran for office was no new cops, no budget. Not until we get to 1,000 police officers will I vote for a budget unless it actually allocates more officers. I didn't vote last year. I'm voting this year. Things have really turned around, and I'm so glad the mayor's also included in a street racing team, because that is a big problem that plagues our community, especially in District 2, that's resulted in deaths in our community. And we're going to have a dedicated team that's going to have the resources to be able to combat this. A lot of these groups are from out of town, and we want to make sure they know not in Fresno. The other thing is this budget also creates some of the highest pay now for our police officers, firefighters, and dispatchers, which I think we talked about pay a lot today, but the people that deserve it the most are our heroes. I mean, these are people that you just call 911 and they will risk everything. We want them to be safe, we want them to be healthy, but they absolutely put their lives on the line every day. And I think sometimes we take it for granted, but we shouldn't. And this city's budget definitely doesn't take them for granted. So with that, I look forward to voting for this budget. I wanted to thank a lot of folks that did a lot of hard work. Thank you to the city manager, Georgianne, great job. And your assistant city managers, thank you everyone. Henry and your staff, thank you very much. Thank you to my staff, Alyssa and Andrew. Mayor, of course, thank you. Lots of work. So definitely earned that pay increase already, even though you're not going to get it. But you already earned it. And thanks to my colleagues. It was a good process working together. Lots of going back and forth, but I think we did a good job this year. So thank you all. So that's it. What was it in conclusion? What did we say? Lastly, I'm done.
Lastly.
Lastly.
Yep, lastly. So city clerk, you're up, and then Councilmember Bredfield.
All right, and this is just a reading into the record, a correction on the, it's the resolution to adopt the FY23 position authorization resolution. That is the 9:00 a.m. B, file ID 221045. The last page of the supplement, it's labeled as page 3 of 3, under Part 6, Transportation Department was omitted, and it should read as follows. Department, Transportation Department, Section 25.1, Facts Operating Division, Transportation Maintenance Division, Transportation Administration Division, Transportation Planning Division, and Support Services Division, months authorized, full year, numbers of positions authorized, 25, full-time equivalent, 20. So that was omitted in the supplement, and it's now in the record.
All right. Councilmember Bredfield, followed by Council Vice President.
Yeah, I just also want to thank the staff, City Manager Georgianne White, and all your staff for working so hard in late hours. I've called you, you're here at 9 o'clock at night, and so thank you. This process wouldn't be done as well if not for you folks. I am supporting this budget, and I'm supporting it for a number of reasons because it focuses on law enforcement, beefing up our police, giving them the salaries that they deserve, it's increasing staffing levels with our fire department and increasing equipment, 911 dispatchers, creating a new facility for 911 dispatchers eventually. And in my district, like other districts, we have many things that are going to improve the lives of people in the district. But I also am focused on ensuring that all parts of the city are addressed. We know that many parts of the city have long been ignored, and for me, I'm fully supportive of those areas. I don't worry that I don't get the same amount of the pie specifically. I think we got to look that we're one city, and so for me, supporting some of my colleagues in their districts with some of the tremendous needs and critical needs that they have is something that I think the people in my district also expect of me. And so I'm happy to support that budget, and I'm happy to look at our budget as addressing needs throughout the city, not just in District 6. So I think it's a great budget. I think the mayor presented an excellent budget, and it's one that I'm happy today to support. Thank you.
Council Vice President.
Yeah, thank you, Council President Esparza. I want to thank my colleagues on the Budget Subcommittee, Council President Esparza, as well as Council Member Arias. I know the last 2 or 3 weeks we spent many hours working with the mayor, the city manager, ALMA, department directors on getting to a point that I hope that we were able to deliver this year that we weren't able to last year, and that's a 7-0 vote on this budget, which is an unprecedented amount here in the city of Fresno, largely thanks to ARPA funds. Measure P funds that exceeded, our wildest expectations. I do want to thank the mayor and the city manager for proposing a budget that didn't require, 200 different motions like last year. And I think the reason we got there is because we are working well together. I think you've made yourselves available. You've come by and at least talked to me multiple times about the needs in my districts. And I largely saw that represented in the budget that you proposed. So I do appreciate the time and thoughtfulness that you put into your proposed budget. I think with a council like this, you don't get less than 100 motions. So I think 94 is pretty darn good. I do want to say that, in my opinion, this is a budget that delivers on the promises of a safe, clean, and compassionate Fresno. I could tell you those are the values that this budget puts forward because those are the values of this council, of this mayor, of this administration. And I could tell you that over the coming fiscal year, folks in the city of Fresno are going to see a quality of life improvement regardless of what zip code that you call home. I talked about safe, clean, and compassionate, and I just want to run through some of the major line items. Some are citywide, some are District 4 specific, but I think they're worth highlighting. Safe for Fresno. Have the funding for 37 new sworn police officers across our city, including 10 officers dedicated to illegal street racing on our major corridors. We're adding officers that are going to be a dedicated bicycle proactive unit in our community, including a dedicated bicycle team in District 4. I want to thank Chief Balderrama for all the work in making that happen. We're going to be adding new dispatchers. We have the funding to start working on a new 911 dispatch facility, which is going to be critical on reducing call and response times in the city of Fresno, and are going to help our new officers do their job better. Can anticipate 24 new firefighters. We're going to have an overall, like Councilmember Bredefeld said, beefed up public safety presence across the city of Fresno. Not just reactive, but proactive, and that's going to be true not just for our police, but for our firefighters as well. A cleaner Fresno. $2.4 million for continued citywide tree trimming, maintaining a 10-year tree trimming cycle across the city of Fresno, where before we were at a 20-year plus tree trimming cycle. The mayor did include nearly $500,000 to proactively plant new trees, specifically 1,000 new trees across the city of Fresno every single year up until the year 2035, focusing on the most disadvantaged neighborhoods in the city of Fresno. Tell you District 4 is going to have $1.5 million for beautification of our median islands and frontage islands across our major corridors like Shaw, First, Cedar, Fresno Street, and it's going to be a big improvement on reducing the blight in some of our major business corridors. In addition to that, I'm happy to say that District 4 has secured approximately $6.2 million for our parks this year, which is huge. This is something that I have tried to make a priority in my first 18 months on council because I've talked to a lot of folks who live around a neighborhood park and they moved there 40, 50 years ago because that was an asset to their home, it was an asset to their neighborhood. And decade by decade, parks became less of a priority for the city of Fresno, and encampments moved in, and blight and neglect moved in. And those assets became liabilities to the folks living around those parks. I'm happy to say over the last couple of years, the city of Fresno has done a 180 and made parks a huge commitment. So we could expect over 10 parks in just District 4 to receive major upgrades and improvements, expanded programming. We're looking at acquiring even additional park space in District 4 to not just improve the parks that we have, but to add additional green space as well. And lastly, a more compassionate Fresno. This budget, thanks to the mayor and his vision, is dedicating $40 million towards affordable housing programs here in the city of Fresno. That's going to include $2 million towards eviction protection program to make sure that folks in our city are not illegally evicted from their homes, adding to our homeless problem. We set aside $50,000 to help relocate folks who are living in deplorable living conditions in their units and are not getting that paid for by their landlords. We have increased the ridership that is available to ride our buses at zero fare. So we're going to continue zero fare for our veterans, for our active military personnel, children's ages 0 to 12. Seniors 65 and up are able to ride the bus for free. Medicare users and persons with disabilities. And again, this was largely possible because of a generous contribution from our partners at Kaiser Permanente, but also because our transportation team has found the value in making sure that folks that need the bus most are able to access it when they need it the most. We have, in District 4, we're going to be adding 10 new protected shelters to existing bus stops. We have continued funding for a new senior center here in the city of Fresno, and funding for the ongoing operations of the city's new animal center, as well as getting our reserves up to just about 10%. So God forbid we're ever in another economic crisis, we could mitigate the hard decisions that will have to be made on this council at that time. So I want to again thank my colleagues, the mayor and the administration for delivering on a budget that promises a safer Fresno, a cleaner Fresno, and a more compassionate Fresno. Thank you, Council President.
All right. I don't see anyone else punched up right now. I think we're getting close to a vote. I feel it. So before I give my remarks, Clerk, I do want to note one thing for myself. Although the research of our city attorney's office indicates that this recusal is optional due to the item being one small piece of the much larger budget, out of an abundance of caution, I have a potential conflict with an ARPA item related to FY22 Budget Motion 58, found on page 2 of the FY23 Budget Reconciliation Summary, and I will recuse myself from that item only because of the item's proximity to my primary residence, out of caution. So before we vote, I do want to thank first and foremost my council colleagues and then the mayor and the city manager. Dream team, I think, this year. Last year is myself and Chavez and I think Soria. So had 2 new folks in the room with me in terms of council colleagues. Done 2 budgets as council leadership now, both with the mayor, and it's been a relatively smooth process. So much so that I think we're going to get that 7-0 this year. So again, I want to thank you and then all the folks under your administration. June. I mean, I see you guys every year just kind of bending over backwards to push out these memos for us and pushing out more information at a faster rate than I've ever seen before. I don't know how many memos you guys did, probably over 100. It was quite a bit. So again, I want to thank all the folks who in the background are really making it happen. The budget we're about to pass, I think, hits all the right notes and is a reflection of our values here in Fresno. You've heard from my colleagues, and not too much more I could add, that we have a lot on housing, on infrastructure, on public safety, on parks, you name it. We've seen increases in almost sort of every category. And I didn't have to come begging for housing money this year because the mayor, made it a priority to put 40 million in. I couldn't get 25 million last year, but this year he put in 40. I think that's one example of him listening to council and concerns. And as the mayor of the whole city, right, taking a moment to sort of absorb what we're hearing in our districts, sort of a little more on the ground. So we've got a great piece of legislation here. The most important thing we do every fiscal year is to pass the budget. And without further ado, I think we should get on with it.
Amen.
Let's call the question. What was that?
Roll call?
Yeah, let's do a roll call for dramatic effect.
Dramatic effect. Doesn't work.
The screen doesn't work?
We'll see if it pops up.
We'll see if it pops up. All right, so let's go ahead and cast your vote electronically. Let's see if that works.
Do we want to make a motion for a new screen?
Too late, Chavez.
We'll take it out of the mayor's budget.
Okay, we're going to take a roll call vote. I'm not sure it's working. So on my screen, I see 7 yeses.
Yeah.
All right, let's do a roll call just to make it official,
For all the
So much for technology. We've got it. All right, so I have 7 yeses here, but we'll take a roll call vote just for the record.
Sure. Oh, there it is.
There it is.
Oh, there you go.
Damn, all right. That's it. And actually, clerk, I would like to register a no vote only on item 2D.
Council President?
2D, as my annual protest vote against the gun limit.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to thank our Gary Bredderfield for approving a budget that includes salary raises for council members.
Is city manager capturing this moment?
It's not
Hey,
this
sit down,
budget, it's
Councilmember
next year.
Arias. If I may, Council President, exercise some mayoral privileges since you always exercise presidential.
That's because it's a
after
city
you're
council
done.
meeting, not the mayor's meeting, but you're welcome. Yeah.
Let me start out. We're going to do a news conference here shortly, and I'll say some words. But let me just say thank you to all 7 of you. I have to tell you, it is no easy task getting a 7-0 vote on a budget. And that is what One Fresno is. We care about each other. We care about our neighborhoods. This is a value-driven budget, and it puts our money where our priorities are. And so I want to say thank you to every one of you. Your tough questions make us better as an administration and our staff. I want to just say thank you to the ones who work so tirelessly. And I got to tell you, I have a rock star city manager in Georgianne White, who works tirelessly to make things right. And so, Georgianne, thank you for the late night. I know 3 a.m. was last night for you and Alma. And for our budget staff, Henry, thank you. All of your team. Alma, thank you for being there with us in our office. We have a superstar team, and we have a great council. And I know at times we have our disputes up here because everything we do is in the public setting. But it is good to see what happens when the doors get closed. And we put our community first. And that's what I've seen on this budget. We put our community first and our neighborhoods first and the safety of our people first. And so let me just say thank you to all of you for what you just did. A 7-0 vote, unprecedented, historical. in these times. So thank you, and we'll look forward to the news conference.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right, thanks, Mayor. Are we doing the news conference right now? We're ready to rock and roll? All right, so I think what we're going to do here is order of operations for the remainder of this meeting. This news conference will be held in the parameters of this council meeting, so I'm not going to adjourn at this point formally. But I am going to have the city attorney read off the closed session agenda items that we'll be hearing after lunch. So we're going to do the news conference, then we will go to lunch, and then we'll return for closed session only, because we have concluded the public portion of the agenda. The city
Council
attorney will read
President.
off the, yes.
Council President, if I could just read off a formal recusal. I'm going to be recusing myself from item 5A due to potential conflict based on our city attorney advice. Thank you.
And Council President, one additional one, we will be tabling item 5D until after the public hearing on July 21st of 2022.
Okay.
5D as in David, in closed session.
Okay. City attorney will read off the closed session
Council
agenda,
President,
please.
I'm also recusing myself on item 5B. So for the record, I won't be participating in the closed session.
Okay. Any other recusals or comments from council?
In
All right,
closed
seeing none.
session today, we have conference with legal counsel, existing litigation, City of Fresno versus United States Department of Interior, Bureau of Reclamation. Potential exposure to litigation, Central Valley MNTC Fund, LLC versus City of Fresno. Conference with labor negotiators, all labor. Conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation. Actually make that existing litigation, J&A Mash and Barrel, LLC versus Superior Court of Fresno, and claim by Adventure Church versus City of Fresno, and conference with real property negotiator regarding the property located at 809 East Olive Avenue. We would not expect to have any reportable items after closed session. Thank you.
Test, 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 test. Test, 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 test. Test, test, test.
This is whatever. Click. That's it.
So, okay. God bless America. Okay, I just had a moment of like sheer, oh my gosh.
Yeah, no, we're good.
What's the speaker lineup? Are we going to be here all day or what?
I think, what do you,
I mean, at least you and I.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody else can see. Or maybe. So, do you want to speak?
No, go ahead. You do. Your speeches again. Can't you guys? We'll leave it to the council president. Is that why you were trying to? I just want to know, are you going to ever type for us? You guys don't know what you made me cry. Pop, come on up here now. Tell Luis the high votes are over. Give me with the restroom.
Makes him feel safer around.
Hard work. And tell these guys to shut up. It's a good journey. Well, trust me, she has her moments. I experienced it one time the other day.
There he is. Luis.
Luis, hurry up.
7 o'clock.
Hurry up.
Luis Chavez, hurry up.
Goodness. Oh, that's like pulling teeth. Like pulling teeth.
Fire chief, I prefer to be saved by the fire department than to be shot by one other.
Aaron, come on up here. Aaron, come on up here.
David, come up here, David. Right next to you.
Annalisa, get used to the 7-0 stuff. Okay, that's it. Hey, Dave, you want to come over here? Get in the middle. Okay. Okay, so you're like an outcast over there. Get over here. Okay. Yeah, we are going to keep it short and without tears. So let me start out by thanking everybody for being here today. Today is truly a great day for the people of Fresno, and it's a great day because we passed collectively on a 7-0 vote, not a good budget, but a great budget for the people of Fresno. And I really believe that this budget demonstrates the value that each and every one of us have. The fact that we value the safety of our community, we value our neighborhoods, we value the people who live in those neighborhoods, we value our parks, we value the streets in which people drive on and the sidewalks in which people walk on. And that is what this budget does. It supports those things. It also makes sure that we have placed ourselves in a position in terms of being fiscally responsible by elevating our reserve by an additional $3 million, and we are just under 10% with our budget reserves. Again, a special thanks to all of my staff for what they've done, the hard work. My city manager, Georgianne White, Alma Torres, Henry Farrell, all of our budget folks who were so instrumental in allowing this to occur. This is unprecedented. Unprecedented in the sense that with the investments that we made into our community with this budget, $1.9 billion budget, that includes internal service funds. This budget, again, provides unprecedented investments in our neighborhoods, in housing, in our parks, and public safety, both police and fire department, youth development, as well as our intervention and prevention efforts in terms of reducing crime in our city. This budget provides for the highest number of police officers in our history at 888, with the addition of 37 police officers this year. It also provides for the highest number of firefighters in the history of our department, with 371 firefighters. 2 years ago, there were 81 firefighters working each day in the city of Fresno. Today, that number has grown to, or will grow to, 103 firefighters working each day. This budget will allow for the increase of 1 medical squad. 2 years ago, we had no medical squads in the city of Fresno, and that necessitated our firefighters responding to medical aid calls and pulling them away from fires and having to utilize heavy equipment to get there. So having 4 medical squads in our city is a plus. This budget allows for the different model in terms of how we respond, the police officers in the city respond to mental health type calls, with a $1.2 million set aside to be able to place someone in dispatch that can triage incoming calls involving people in a mental health crisis, as well as the response taking police officers away from those duties. This budget provides for the not only the design but also the development of a new 911 center in the city of Fresno. Our last 911 center was built in 1959, and it has far outlived its ability to serve our community, and we are looking forward to breaking ground on that facility with $10 million committed to it, and we'll be seeking additional money from the state. This budget will provide for a new fire station, Fire Station 12, as we combine our general fund, $4.3 million, as well as some impact fees. And so we are very, very excited about that. This budget provides the largest parks budget in the history of our city. Thanks to Measure P and increased revenues, our parks budget this year will be $108.6 million. That is going to be able to allow us to acquire new land for park development. It's going to allow us to provide the maintenance that we need, provide the facilities, upgrade improvements to our community centers, increase lighting, development of courts, and even pickleball courts that we've heard loud and clear this year, and soccer fields, baseball fields, all those things for our youth. And in speaking of our youth, we already have within this budget, thanks to the state of California, $7.4 million for our youth and young adult workforce development program. And I'll be excited to announce in the coming week our first people that we will be hiring in our community, and we have targeted those that are oftentimes the hard to hire. You'll hear more about that with our $7.4 million workforce development. This budget, as Councilmember Arias spoke of earlier, increases our intervention and prevention efforts by $550,000. That will put $1.5 million toward gang prevention, violence prevention within our city, on top of the $1.8 million that we receive from the state. That's going to support not only our intervention work with gang violence, but also to support Camp Fresno. And so again, exciting budget. One of the things that we came in early on as a council and we all worked closely together on was the importance of housing. $40 million that we are going to put towards housing in our city. That's on top of our normal dollars that we allocate, which is around $20 million. That is a sizable investment, and I believe it shows how much we care about people in our community and the fact that we want them to have shelter. We want them to have rents that are affordable. We want them to have a roof over their head and to be able to own a home, and we're going to support that effort in our city. And I will say that without additional housing, our efforts to address homelessness in our city is going to be limited in terms of success. We've had great success over the last 18 months, 2 years, in addressing our homeless population. I'm proud to say, well, if I look back 18 months when we had 650 people living on our freeways, and we had over 50 encampments in Fresno, this council, myself, made it a commitment that we were going to address homelessness in a very compassionate way by not displacing them from neighborhood to neighborhood, but by placing them in shelter. And I'm proud to say there are no people living on our freeways. And as of today, there are no encampments in the city of Fresno. That's 10 or more people at a location for 10 or more days. That last encampment was removed today. So a big thank you to all of those. You heard Councilmember Arias mention the expansion of our housing division. We're adding 16 people, because we know not only do we have 40 million that we're going to be pushing through housing along with an additional 20, we also know we're going to be getting state and federal dollars to support housing in Fresno, and we want to make sure that we have the resources in place internally to be able to support those efforts. And then lastly, in terms of our neighborhoods and neighborhood infrastructure, we will be investing this year around $60 million into our neighborhood streets and sidewalks in Fresno. In addition to that, the council will have $10.5 million in their budgets to support neighborhood infrastructures of their choosing. When they need a sidewalk repaired, a pothole taken care of, or they want to invest in a neighborhood park, they have the flexibility and ability to do that. So a special thanks. This is a great budget, as I said, a One Fresno budget. And again, shout out to Georgianne White, my city manager, all of our staff, and to this council. Thank you guys for the 7-0 vote. And Council President Esparza.
No. It was not brief, but I will keep it brief. We're cutting into lunchtime here. What we just did here is we passed the largest budget in the city of Fresno's history, just short of $2 billion. I might be 1.8, might be 1.9. The numbers got lost on us there, but that is a big number, not as insignificant. Again, this budget hits all the right notes and focuses on housing and infrastructure and public safety and parks. And I want to thank every single member of the council for their 7-0 vote. I think it shows the unity in that when we come together, we can build something that really reflects the values of every resident here in Fresno. You saw us here in the last several years. We declared our intention to rebuild Fresno, and through all the housing investment and through all the infrastructure investment, that's exactly what we're going to continue to do, is continue pushing forward with that promise. You've seen the projects coming together this fiscal year from what we passed a year ago, and you're going to continue to see that action in those cones and the rebuilding of our entire city. I think what we did here is probably the easy part, because now the $1.9 billion will be spent, and it's going to be on the hardworking staff of the city. the folks who you see in and out of this building, the folks who you see on the fire trucks and the police cars, the folks who you see on the public works trucks, who are actually doing the hard work. And so this was the easy part, us sitting here in our chairs and allocating the dollars and making sure they go to the right places. And I want to thank our staff in advance for the hard work they're going to continue to do in executing this budget. So thank you.
Any, Miguel's in a hurry to eat lunch, but any questions? If you look at his waistline, he probably could miss today. Sure. 1.727 billion was the original budget I rolled out, but that did not include internal service funds that we have in the city. Those are funds that go through information services, personnel, to support those types of activities. So it's a total of $1.9 billion. We went into this budget balanced. When I rolled it out after the 94 motions, we were $60 million out of balance. But we were able to sit down over this last week and tirelessly look at each and every one of the motions, find out where we could delay some of those projects or ways that council members were, quite frankly, very flexible and willing to set those aside for a later time. And then we looked at other funding sources as well, being able to handle it. So it was a very cooperative, collaborative effort. Nothing more than, quite frankly, a cooperation on the part of everyone, all the council. And the city manager yelled once or twice, but other than that, it was good.
That was yelling at the mayor.
Yeah. A very good question in terms of the sustainability. So we're grateful for the one-time dollars, but they are one-time dollars, and it is important that we not become addicted to that influx of dollars or money into our city, because I know that is a mistake that a lot of cities make. We tried to utilize those dollars as much as we possibly could for one-time projects that ultimately would free up dollars to allow us to do other things. But we did not necessarily use those one-time dollars to fund ongoing operations that we knew the dollars would go away in a year or two. So we tried to be very fiscally prudent with those dollars, but to make the most of those dollars, because we're going to be judged by how we used those American Rescue Funds, how we use the increase in Measure P dollars, the $58.3 million that we received in Measure P dollars this year. So we're very cognizant of that. Everybody in this council was aware of that. I did not see anyone trying to overspend just to meet the needs of their neighborhoods.
To summarize the mayor,
you say it.
To summarize the mayor, ongoing costs are largely covered by ongoing revenues.
Yeah.
It's that easy, Mayor. That easy.
That was an economist that said that. Anyone else on questions?
Thank you for the raise.
Yep. Thank you.
No update.
All right, are we on? All right, so I do need to formally adjourn the public portion of this meeting. We'll come back in the afternoon or closed session at 2 o'clock. 2 p.m. No.
you.